Chapter 1. An Abbess of the 18th Century. On the February 8, 1719, a carriage, bearing the fleur-de-lis of France, with the motto of Orleans, preceded by 2 outriders and a page, entered the porch of the Abbey of Chelles, precisely as the clock struck 10, and, the door having been quickly opened, its 2 occupants stepped out. The first was a man of from 45 to 46 years of age, short and rather stout, with a high color, easy in his movements, and displaying in every gesture a certain air of high breeding and command. The second, who followed slowly, was short and remarkably thin. His face, though not precisely ugly, was very disagreeable, although bare the evidences of a keen intellect. He seemed to feel the cold, and followed his companion, wrapped up in an ample cloak. The first of these 2 made his way up the staircase with the air of a man well acquainted with the locality, passing through a large antechamber containing several nuns, who bowed to the ground as he passed. He ran rather than walked to a reception room, which, it must be confessed, bore but little trace of that austerity which is ordinarily ascribed to the interior of a cloister. The other, who followed leisurely, was saluted almost as humbly by the nuns. "And now," said the first, "wait here and warm yourself, while I go to her, and in 10 minutes I will make an end of all these abuses you mention. If she deny, and I want proof, I will call you." 10 minutes, monseigneur," replied the man in the cloak. "In 2 hours your highness will not have even broached the subject of your visit." "Oh, the Abbess de Chelles is a clever woman." So saying, he stretched himself out in an easy chair, which he had drawn near the fire, and rested his thin legs on the fender. Yes," replied he who had been addressed as Your Highness. "I know, and if I could forget it, you take care to remind me of it often enough. Why did you bring me here today through all this wind and snow?" "Because you would not come yesterday, monseigneur." "Yesterday it was impossible. I had an appointment with Lord Stair at 5 o'clock. In a house in the Rue de Bons-Enfants. My lord does not live any longer. Then at the English embassy? Abbé, I have forbidden you to follow me." "Monseigneur, it is my duty to disobey you." "Well, then, disobey. But let me tell stories at my pleasure, without your having the impertinence to show me that you know it, just for the sake of proving the efficiency of your police. Monseigneur may rest easy in future. I will believe anything. I will not promise as much in return, Abbé, for here I think you have made a mistake. Monseigneur, I know what I said, and I repeat it. But look, no noise, no light, perfect quiet. Your account is incorrect. It is evident that we are late. Yesterday, Monseigneur, where you stand, there was an orchestra of 50 musicians. There, where that young sister kneels so devoutly, was a buffet. What was upon it I cannot tell, but I know it was there, and in the gallery on the left, where a modest supper of lentils and cream cheese is now preparing for the Holy Sisters, were 200 people drinking, dancing, and making... Well, making what? Making love, monseigneur. Diable, are you sure of this? Rather more sure than if I had seen it. And that is why you do well in coming today, and would have done better in coming yesterday. This sort of life does not become an abbess, monseigneur. No, it is only fit for an abbé. Ha! I am a politician, monseigneur. Well, my daughter is a political abbess, that is all. Oh, let it be so, if it suits you, monseigneur. I am not so particular in point of morals, you know. Tomorrow there will be another song or 2 out, but what does that matter? Well, wait for me, and I will go and scold. Take my word for it, monseigneur. If you wish to scold properly, you had better do it here, before me. If you fail in memory or arguments, sign to me, and I will come to the rescue." Yes, you are right," said the person who had undertaken to redress wrongs, and in whom we hope the reader has recognized Philippe d'Orleans. "Yes, this scandal must be quieted a little, at any rate. The abbess must not receive more than twice a week. There must be none of these dances and assemblies, and the cloisters must be re-established. Mademoiselle d'Orleans passed from gaiety to a religious life. She left the Palais Royal for Chelles in spite of all I could do to prevent her. Now, for 5 days in a week, she must see the abbess, and that will leave her, too, to play the great lady. Ah, monseigneur, you are beginning to see the thing in its true light. Is not this what you wish? It is what is necessary. It seems to me that an abbess who has 30 valets, 15 footmen, 10 cooks, 8 grooms, and a mute, who fences, plays the horn and the violoncello, who is a surgeon and a hairdresser, who shoots and makes fireworks, cannot be very dull. Has not my daughter been told of my arrival? Said the Duke to an old nun who crossed the room with a bunch of keys in her hand. I wish to know whether I shall go to her, or whether she is coming to me. Madam is coming, Monseigneur, replied the sister, respectfully. It is well, murmured the Regent, somewhat impatiently. Monseigneur, remember the parable of Jesus driving out the money changers from the temple. You know it, or ought to know it, for I taught it you when I was your preceptor. Now, drive out these musicians, these Pharisees, these comedians and anatomists. 3 only of each profession will make a nice escort for our return. Do not fear, I am in a preaching vein. Then, replied Du Bois, rising, that is most fortunate, for here she is. At this moment a door, leading to the interior of the convent, was opened, and the person so impatiently expected appeared. Let us explain who was this worthy person who had succeeded, by repeated follies, in rousing the anger of Philippe d'Orleans, the most indulgent man and father in France. Mademoiselle de Chartres, Louise Adelaide Ullins, was the second and prettiest of the Regent's daughters. She had a beautiful complexion, fine eyes, a good figure, and well-shaped hands. Her teeth were splendid, and her grandmother, the Princess Palatine, compared them to a string of pearls in a coral casket. She danced well, sang better, and played at sight. She had learned of Caucheraud, one of the first artists of the opera, with whom she had made much more progress than is common with ladies, and especially with princesses. It is true that she was most assiduous. The secret of that assiduity will be shortly revealed. All her tastes were masculine. She appeared to have changed sex with her brother Louis. She loved dogs and horses, amused herself with pistols and foils, but cared little for any feminine occupations. Her chief predilection, however, was for music. She seldom missed a night at the opera when her master Caucheraud performed, and once, when he surpassed himself in an air, she exclaimed, "Bravo, bravo, my dear Caucheraud," in a voice audible to the whole house. The Duchesse d'Orleans judged that the exclamation was somewhat indiscreet for a princess of the blood, and decided that Mademoiselle Chartres knew enough of music. Caucheraud was well paid, and desired not to return to the Palais Royal. The Duchess also begged her daughter to spend a fortnight at the convent of Chelles, the abbess of which, a sister of Marechal de Villars, was a friend of hers. It was doubtless during this retreat that Mademoiselle, who did everything by fits and starts, resolved to renounce the world. Toward the end of the Holy Week of 1718, she asked and obtained her father's permission to spend Easter at Chelles. But at the end of that time, instead of returning to the Palais, she expressed a wish to remain as a nun. The Duke tried to oppose this, but Mademoiselle de Chartres was obstinate, and on the 23rd of April she took the vows. Then the Duke treated with Mademoiselle de Villars for the abbey, and on the promise of 12,000 francs, Mademoiselle de Chartres was named abbess in her stead, and she had occupied the post about a year. This, then, was the abbess of Chelles, who appeared before her father, not surrounded by an elegant and profane court, but followed by 6 nuns dressed in black and holding torches. There was no sign of frivolity or pleasure, nothing but the most somber apparel and the most severe aspect. The Regent, however, suspected that he had been kept waiting while all this was preparing. "I do not like hypocrisy," said he sharply, "and can forgive vices which are not hidden under the garb of virtues. All these lights, madam, are doubtless the remains of yesterday's illumination. Are all your flowers so faded and all your guests so fatigued that you cannot show me a single bouquet nor a single dancer?" "Monsieur," said the abbess in a grave tone, "this is not the place for fêtes and amusements." "Yes," answered the Regent. "I see that if you feasted yesterday, you fast today. Did you come here, monsieur, to catechize? At least what you see should reply to any accusations against me." "I came to tell you, madam," replied the Regent, annoyed at being supposed to have been duped, "that the life you lead displeases me. Your conduct yesterday was unbecoming an abbess. Your austerities today are unbecoming a princess of the blood. Decide, once for all, between the nun and the court lady. People begin to speak ill of you, and I have enemies enough of my own, without your saddling me with others from the depth of your convent." Alas, monsieur, in giving entertainments, balls, and concerts, which have been quoted as the best in Paris, I have neither pleased those enemies, nor you, nor myself. Yesterday was my last interview with the world. This morning I have taken leave of it forever, and today, while still ignorant of your visit, I had adopted a determination from which I will never depart. And what is it? Asked the Regent, suspecting that this was only a new specimen of his daughter's ordinary follies. Come to this window and look out, said the abbess. The Regent, in compliance with the invitation, approached the window and saw a large fire blazing in the middle of the courtyard. Du Bois, who was as curious as if he had really been an abbé, slipped up beside him. Several people were rapidly passing and repassing before the fire and throwing various singular-shaped objects into the flames. But what is that? Asked the Regent of Du Bois, who seemed as much surprised as himself. That which is burning now? Asked the abbé. Yes, replied the Regent. Monseigneur, it looks to me very much like a violoncello. It is mine, said the abbess, an excellent violoncello by Valéry. And you are burning it, exclaimed the Duke. All instruments are sources of perdition, said the abbess, in a tone which betrayed the most profound remorse. But here is a harpsichord, interrupted the Duke. My harpsichord, monsieur, it was so perfect that it enticed me toward earthly things. I condemned it this morning. And what are those chests of papers with which they are feeding the fire? Asked Du Bois, whom the spectacle seemed to interest immensely. My music, which I am having burned. Your music? Demanded the Regent. Yes, and even yours, answered the abbess. Look carefully, and you will see your opera Panthi follow in its turn. You will understand that my resolution once taken, its execution was necessarily general. Well, madam, this time you are really mad. To light the fire with music, and then feed it with bass viols and harpsichords is really a little too luxurious. I am doing penance, monsieur. Say rather that you are refitting your house, and that this is an excuse for buying new furniture, since you are doubtless tired of the old. No, Monseigneur, it is no such thing. Well, then what is it? Tell me frankly. In truth, I am weary of amusing myself, and indeed, I intend to act differently. And what are you going to do? I am going with my nuns to visit my tomb. Diable, Monseigneur, exclaimed the abbé. Her wits are gone at last. It will be truly edifying, will it not, monsieur? Continued the abbess, gravely. Indeed, answered the Regent. If you really do this, I doubt not, but people will laugh at it twice as much as they did at your suppers. Will you accompany me, messieurs? Continued the abbess. I am going to spend a few minutes in my coffin. It is a fancy I have had a long time. You will have plenty of time for that, said the Regent. Moreover, you have not even invented this amusement, for Charles V, who became a monk as you became a nun, without exactly knowing why, thought of it before you. Then you will not go with me, monsieur, said the abbess. I, answered the Duke, who had not the least sympathy with somber ideas. I go to see tombs. I go to hear the De Profundis. No, pardieu. And the only thing which consoles me for not being able to escape them some day is that I shall neither see the one nor the other. Ah, monsieur, answered the abbess, in a scandalized tone, you do not, then, believe in the immortality of the soul? I believe that you are raving mad. Confound this abbé, who promises me a feast, and brings me to a funeral. By my faith, Monseigneur, said Du Bois, I think I preferred extravagance to yesterday. It was more attractive. The abbess bowed and made a few steps toward the door. The Duke and Du Bois remained staring at each other, uncertain whether to laugh or cry. One word more, said the Duke. Are you decided this time, or is it not some fever which you have caught from your confessor? If it be real, I have nothing to say, but if it be a fever, I desire that they cure you of it. I have Morceau and Chirac, whom I pay for attending on me and mine. Monseigneur, answered the abbess, you forget that I know sufficient of medicine to undertake my own cure. If I were ill, I can therefore assure you that I am not. I am a Jansenist, that is all. Ah, cried the Duke, this is more Father Ledoux's work, that execrable Benedictine. At least I know a treatment which will cure him. What is that? Asked the abbess. The Bastille. And he went out in a rage, followed by Du Bois, who was laughing heartily. You see, said the Regent, after a long silence, and when they were nearing Paris, I preach with a good grace. It seems it was I who needed the sermon. Well, you are a happy father. That is all. I compliment you on your younger daughter, Mademoiselle de Chartres. Unluckily, your elder daughter, the Duchesse de Berry. Oh, do not talk of her. She is my ulcer, particularly when I am in a bad temper. Well, I have a great mind to make use of it by finishing with her at one blow. She is at the Luxembourg? I believe so. Let us go to the Luxembourg, Monseigneur. You go with me? I shall not leave you tonight. Well, drive to the Luxembourg. Chapter 2. Decidedly the family begins to settle down. Whatever the Regent might say, the Duchesse de Berry was his favorite daughter. At 7 years of age, she had been seized with a disease which all the doctors declared to be fatal, and when they had abandoned her, her father, who had studied medicine, took her in hand himself and succeeded in saving her. From that time, the Regent's affection for his daughter became almost a weakness. He allowed the haughty and self-willed child the most perfect liberty. Her education was neglected, but this did not prevent Louis XIV from choosing her as a wife for his grandson, the Duc de Berry. It is well known how death at once struck a triple blow at the royal posterity, and within a few years carried off the Dauphin, the Duc and Duchesse de Bourgogne, and the Duc de Berry. Left a widow at 20 years of age, loving her father almost as tenderly as he loved her, and having to choose between the society of Versailles and that of the Palais Royal, the Duchesse de Berry, young, beautiful, and fond of pleasure, had quickly decided. She took part in all the fates, the pleasures and follies of her father. The Duc d'Orléans, in his increasing fondness for his daughter, who already had 600,000 francs a year, allowed her 400,000 francs more from his private fortune. He gave up the Luxembourg to her, gave her a bodyguard, and at length, to the scandal of those who advocated the old forms of etiquette, he merely shrugged his shoulders when the Duchesse de Berry passed through Paris preceded by cymbals and trumpets, and only laughed when she received the Venetian ambassador on a throne, raised on 3 steps, which nearly embroiled France with the Republic of Venice. About this time, the Duchesse de Berry took a fancy to fall in love with the Chevalier de Riam. The Chevalier de Riam was a nephew or grandnephew of the Duc de Lauzun, who came to Paris in 1715 to seek his fortune and found it at the Luxembourg. Introduced to the princess by Madame de Mouchy, he soon established the same influence over her as his uncle, the Duc de Lauzun, had exercised over La Grande Mademoiselle 50 years before, and was soon established as her lover, supplanting Lahy, who was sent on an embassy to Denmark. The Duchess had the singular moderation of never having had more than 2 lovers, Lahy, whom she had never avowed, and Riam, whom she proclaimed aloud. This was not the true cause of the malice for which the princess was pursued. It arose rather from the previous offenses of her passage through Paris, the reception of the ambassadors, her bodyguard, and her assumptions. The Duke himself was indignant at Riam's influence over his daughter. Riam had been brought up by the Duc de Lauzun, who in the morning had crushed the hand of the Princess de Monaco with the heel of the boot which, in the evening, he made the daughter of Gaston d'Orléans pull off, and who had given his nephew the following instruction, which Riam had fully carried out. The daughters of France, said he, must be treated with a high hand. And Riam, trusting to his uncle's experience, had so well schooled the Duchesse de Berry that she scarcely dared to give a fete without his permission. The Duke took as strong a dislike to Riam as his careless character allowed him to take to anyone, and, under pretext of serving the Duchess, had given him a regiment, then the government of Cognac, then the order to retire to his government, which almost made his favors look like disfavors and disgrace. The Duchess was not deceived. She went to her father, begged, prayed, and scolded, but in vain, and she went away threatening the Duke with her anger and declaring that Riam should not go. The Duke's only reply was to repeat his order for Riam's departure the next day, and Riam had respectfully promised to obey. The same day, which was the one preceding that on which our story opens, Riam had ostensibly set out, and Du Bois himself had told the Duke that he had left for Cognac at 9 o'clock. Meanwhile, the Duke had not again seen his daughter. Thus, when he spoke of going to finish with her, it was rather a pardon than a quarrel that he went to seek. Du Bois had not been duped by this pretended resolution, but Riam was gone, and that was all he wanted. He hoped to slip in some new personage who should efface all memory of Riam, who was to be sent to join the Marichal de Berwick in Spain. The carriage stopped before the Luxembourg, which was lighted as usual. The Duke ascended the steps with his usual celerity. Du Bois remained in a corner of the carriage. Presently the Duke appeared at the door with a disappointed air. "Ah, Monseigneur," said Du Bois, "are you refused admittance?" "No, the Duchess is not here." "Where then, at the Carmelites?" "No, at Meudon." "At Meudon in February, and in such weather, what can she be doing there?" "It is easy to know." "How?" "Let's go to Meudon." "To Meudon," said the Regent, jumping into the carriage. "I allow you 25 minutes to get there." "I would humbly beg to remind Monseigneur," said the coachman, "that the horses have already gone 10 leagues. Kill them, but be at Meudon in 25 minutes." There was no reply to be made to such an order. The coachman whipped his horses, and the noble animals set out at as brisk a pace as if they had just left the stable. Throughout the drive, Du Bois was silent, and the Regent thoughtful. There was nothing on the route to arrest the attention of either, and they arrived at Meudon full of contradictory reflections. This time both alighted. Du Bois, thinking the interview might be long, was anxious to find a more comfortable waiting place in a carriage. At the door they found a Swiss in full livery. He stopped them. The Duke made himself known. "Pardon," said the Swiss. "I did not know that Monseigneur was expected." "Expected or not, I am here. Send word to the princess." "Monseigneur is to be at the ceremony?" asked the Swiss, who seemed embarrassed. "Yes, of course," put in Du Bois, stopping the Duke, who was about to ask what ceremony. "And I also." "Then shall I lead Monseigneur at once to the chapel?" "To the chapel?" asked the Duke. "Yes, for the ceremony is already commenced." "Ah, Du Bois," said the Duke. "Is she also going to take the veil?" "Monseigneur," said Du Bois, "I should rather say she is going to be married." "Pardieu!" exclaimed the Regent. "That would crown all." And he darted toward the staircase, followed by Du Bois. "Does not Monseigneur wish me to guide him?" asked the Swiss. "It is needless," cried the Regent. "I know the way." Indeed, with an agility surprising in so corpulent a man, the Regent darted through the rooms and corridors, and arrived at the door of the chapel, which appeared to be closed, but yielded to the first touch. Du Bois was right. Riam, who had returned secretly, was on his knees with the princess, before the private chaplain of the Luxembourg, while M. de Pons, Riam's relative, and the Marquis de la Rochefoucauld, captain of the princess's guard, held the canopy over their heads. Messrs. de Mouchy and de Lauzun stood, one by the Duchess and the other by Riam. "Certainly fortune is against us, Monseigneur," said Du Bois. "We are 5 minutes too late." "Mordieu!" cried the Duke, exasperated. "We will see." "Chut!" said Du Bois. "I cannot permit sacrilege. If it were any use, I do not say, but this would be mere folly." "Are they married, then?" asked the Duke, drawing back. "So much married, Monseigneur, that the devil himself cannot unmarry them, without the assistance of the Pope. I will write to Rome." "Take care, Monseigneur. Do not waste your influence. You will want all, so get me made a cardinal." "But," exclaimed the Regent, "such a marriage is intolerable." "Mésalliances are in fashion," said Du Bois. "There is nothing else talked of. Louis XIV made a mésalliance in marrying Madame de Maintenon, to whom you pay a pension as his widow. La Grande Mademoiselle made a mésalliance in marrying the Duc de Lauzun. You did so in marrying Mademoiselle de Blois. So much so, indeed, that when you announced a marriage to your mother, the Princess Palatine, she replied by a blow. Did not I do the same when I married the daughter of a village schoolmaster? After such good examples, why should not your daughter do so in her turn?" "Silence, demon," said the Regent. "Besides," continued Du Bois, "the Duchesse de Berry's passion began to be talked about, and this will quiet the talk, for it will be known all through Paris tomorrow. Decidedly, Monseigneur, your family begins to settle down." The Duc d'Orléans uttered an oath, to which Du Bois replied by a laugh, which Mephistopheles might have envied. "Silence!" cried a Swiss, who did not know who it was that was making a noise, and did not wish the pious exhortation of the chaplain to be lost. Silence, monseigneur, repeated Dubois. You are disturbing the ceremony. If we are not silent, replied the Duke, the next thing they will do will be to turn us out. Silence, repeated the Swiss, striking the flagstone with his halberd, while the Duchesse de Berry sent a Mouchy to learn who was causing the disturbance. The Mouchy obeyed the orders of the Duchess, and perceiving two persons who appeared to be concealing themselves in the shade, he approached them. Who is making this noise? Said he. And who gave you permission to enter this chapel? One who has a great mind to send you all out by the window, replied the Regent, but who will content himself at present with begging you to order M. de Ryam to set out at once for Cognac, and to intimate to the Duchesse de Berry that she had better absent herself from the Palais Royal. The Regent went out, signing to Dubois to follow, and leaving M. de Mouchy bewildered at his appearance, returned to the Palais Royal. That evening the Regent wrote a letter, and ringing for a valet, take care that this letter is dispatched by an express courier tomorrow morning, and is delivered only to the person to whom it is addressed. That person was Madame Ursule, superior of the Ursuline convent at Clisson. Chapter 3. What passed 3 nights later, at 800 leagues from the Palais Royal, 3 nights after that on which we have seen the Regent, first at Chelles and then at Meudon. A scene passed in the environs of Nantes, which cannot be omitted in this history. We will therefore exercise our privilege of transporting the reader to that place. On the road to Clisson, 2 or 3 miles from Nantes, near the convent known as the residence of Abelard, was a large dark house, surrounded by thick stunted trees. Hedges everywhere surrounded the enclosure outside the walls, hedges impervious to sight, and only interrupted by a wicket gate. This gate led into a garden, at the end of which was a wall, having a small, massive, enclosed door. From a distance, this grave and dismal residence appeared like a prison. It was, however, a convent, full of young Augustines, subject to a rule lenient as compared with provincial customs, but rigid as compared with those of Paris. The house was inaccessible on 3 sides, but the fourth, which did not face the road, abutted on a large sheet of water, and 10 feet above its surface were the windows of the refectory. This little lake was carefully guarded, and was surrounded by high wooden palisades. A single iron gate opened into it, and at the same time gave a passage to the waters of a small rivulet which fed the lake, and the water had egress at the opposite end. In the summer, a small boat belonging to the garden was seen on the water, and was used for fishing. Sometimes, also in summer on dark nights, the river gate was mysteriously opened, and a man, wrapped in a large brown cloak, silently dropped into the little boat, which appeared to detach itself from its fastenings, then glided quietly along, and stopped under one of the barred windows of the refectory. Soon a sound was heard, imitating the croaking of a frog or the cry of the owl so common there, and a young girl would appear at the window, and pass her head to the opening between the bars, which were, however, too high for the man to reach. A low and tender conversation was then carried on, and at length, after a different hour and a different signal had been agreed upon for their next interview, they separated, the boat disappeared, the gate shut gently, and the young girl closed the window with a sigh. But now it was the month of February, and in the terrible winter of 1719, the trees were powdered with hoar-frost, and it was at this time impossible to glide quietly along in the little boat, for the lake was covered with ice. And yet in this biting cold, in this dark, starless night, a cavalier ventured alone into the open country, and along a crossroad which led to Clisson. He threw the reins on the neck of his horse, which proceeded at a slow and careful pace. Soon, however, in spite of his instinctive precaution, the poor animal, which had no light to guide him, struck against a stone and nearly fell. The rider soon perceived that his horse was lamed, and on seeing a trail of blood upon the snow, discovered that it was wounded. The young man appeared seriously annoyed at the accident, and while deliberating what course to take, he heard a sound of horses' feet on the same road, and, feeling sure that if they were pursuing him he could not escape them, he remounted his horse, drew aside behind some fallen trees, put his sword under his arm, drew out a pistol, and waited. The cavalcade soon appeared. They were 4 in number, and rode silently along, passing the group of trees which hid the cavalier, when suddenly they stopped. One who appeared the chief alighted, took out a dark lantern, and examined the road. As they could not see far, they returned some steps, and, by the light of their lantern, perceived the cavalier. The sound of cocking pistols was now heard. "Hola!" said a cavalier with the wounded horse, taking the initiative. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "It is he," murmured 2 or 3 voices. The man with the lantern advanced toward the cavalier. "Advance 1 step further, and you are a dead man," said the cavalier. "Declare your name at once, that I may know with whom I have to deal." "Shoot no one, Gaston de Chanley," replied the man with the lantern calmly, "and put up your pistols." "Ah, it is the Marquis de Pontcallec." "Yes, it is I." "And what do you come here for, may I ask?" "To demand some explanation of your conduct. Approach and reply, if you please." "The invitation is singular, Marquis. If you wish for an answer, could you not ask in other terms?" "Approach, Gaston," said another voice. "We really wish to speak with you." "A la bonne heure," said Chanley. "I recognize you there, Montluis, but I confess I am not accustomed to M. de Pontcallec's manner of proceeding." "My manners are those of frank and open Breton, monsieur," replied the Marquis, "of one who has nothing to hide from his friends, and is willing to be questioned as freely as he questions others." "I join Montluis," said another voice, "in begging Gaston to explain amicably. Surely it is not our interest to quarrel among ourselves." "Thanks, du Coetic," said de Chanley. "I am of the same opinion. So here I am." And sheathing his sword at these words, the young man issued from his retreat and approached the group. "M. de Toulet," said Pontcallec, in the tone of a man who has a right to issue commands. "Watch that no one approaches." M. de Toulet obeyed and rode round in a circle, keeping both eyes and ears open. "And now," said the Marquis, "let us put out our lantern, since we have found our man." "Messers," said de Chanley, "all this seems to me somewhat strange. It appears that you were following me, that you were seeking for me. Now you have found me, and may put out your lantern. What does it mean? If it is a joke, I confess I think both time and place ill-chosen." "No, monsieur," replied Pontcallec in his hard, dry voice. "It is not a joke. It is an interrogatory." "An interrogatory?" said de Chanley, frowning. "An explanation, rather," said Montluis. "Interrogatory or explanation, it matters not," said Pontcallec. "The thing is too serious to argue about words. De Chanley, I repeat, reply to our questions." "You speak roughly, Marquis de Pontcallec," replied the Chevalier. "If I command, it is because I have the right to do so. Am I or am I not your chief?" "Certainly you are, but that is no reason for forgetting consideration which one gentleman owes to another." "Monsieur de Chanley, all these objections seem to me like shuffling. You have sworn to obey, do so now." "I swore to obey," replied the Chevalier, "but not as a servant. You swore to obey as a slave. Obey, then, or submit to the consequences of your disobedience." "Monsieur le Marquis." "My dear Gaston," cried Montluis, "speak, I beg, as soon as possible. By a word you can remove all suspicion." "Suspicion!" cried Gaston, pale with anger. "Am I suspected, then?" "Certainly you are," said Pontcallec, with his ordinary roughness. "Do you think if we did not suspect you we should amuse ourselves by following you on such a night as this?" "Oh, that is quite another matter," said Gaston coldly. "Tell me your suspicions, I listen." "Chevalier, remember the facts. We four conspiring together, and we did not seek your aid. You offered it, saying that besides being willing to aid in the public good, you had a private revenge to serve in this. Am I not right?" "You are." "We received you, welcomed you as a friend, as a brother. We told you all our hopes, all our plans. Nay, more, you were elected by chance, the one to strike the glorious blow. Each one of us offered to take your part, but you refused. Is it not so?" "You have spoken the strictest truth, Marquis. This very morning we drew the lots. This evening you should be on the road to Paris. Instead of that, where we find you? On the road to Clisson, where are lodged the mortal enemies of Breton independence, where lives your sworn foe, the Marechal de Montesquieu." "Ah, monsieur," said Gaston scornfully, "reply by open words and not by sneers. Reply de Chanley, and quickly." "Reply, Gaston," said Du Quetic and Montluis, imploringly. And to what am I to reply? You are to account for your frequent absence during the last 2 months, for the mystery which surrounds you, for refusing, as you do once or twice weekly, to join our nightly meetings. We confess, Gaston, all this has made us uneasy. By a word you can reassure us. You see, monsieur, that you are proved guilty by hiding, instead of pursuing your course. I did not pursue my course, because my horse was wounded. You may see the stains of blood upon the road. But why did you hide? Because I wished to know first who was pursuing me. Have I not the fear of being arrested, as well as yourselves? And where are you going? If you had followed my steps as you had done hitherto, you would have found that my path did not lead to Clisson, nor to Paris. I beg, said de Chanley, that you will trust me and respect my secret, a secret in which not only my own honor, but that of another is concerned. You do not know, perhaps it may be exaggerated, how extreme is my delicacy on this point. Then it is a love secret, said Montlewis. Yes, and the secret of a first love, replied Gaston. All evasions, cried Pontcallec. Marquis, said Gaston haughtily. This is not saying enough, my friend, replied Duke Edic. How can we believe that you are going to rendezvous in such weather, and that this rendezvous is not at Clisson, where, except the Augustine convent, there is not a single house for 2 miles around? M. de Chanley, said the Marquis de Pontcallec, in an agitated voice, you swore to obey me as your chief and to devote soul and body to our holy cause. Monsieur, our undertaking is serious. Our property, our liberties, our lives, and our honor are at stake. Will you reply clearly and freely to the questions which I put to you in the name of all, so as to remove all doubts? If not, Gaston de Chanley, by virtue of that right which you gave me, of your own free will, over your life, if not, I declare on my honor, I will blow your brains out with my own hand. A solemn silence followed these words. Not one voice was raised to defend Gaston. He looked at each one in turn, and each one turned away from him. Marquis, said the Chevalier at length, in a tone of deep feeling, not only do you insult me by suspicions, but you grieve me by saying that I can only remove those suspicions by declaring my secret. Stay, added he, drawing a pocketbook from his coat, and hastily penciling a few words on a leaf which he tore out. Stay, here is the secret you wish to know. I hold it in one hand, and in the other I hold a loaded pistol. Will you make me reparation for the insult you have offered me? Or, in my turn, I give you my word as a gentleman that I will blow my brains out. When I am dead, open my hand and read this paper. You will then see if I deserved your suspicions. And Gaston held the pistol to his head with the calm resolution which showed that he would keep his word. Gaston, Gaston, cried Montlewis, while Du Quetic held his arm. Stop, in heaven's name. Marquis, he would do as he said. Pardon him, and he will tell us all. Is it not so, Gaston? You will not have a secret from your brothers, who beg you, in the names of their wives and children, to tell it them. Certainly, said the Marquis. I not only pardon but love him. He knows it well. Let him but prove his innocence, and I will make him every reparation. But before that, nothing. He is young and alone in the world. He has not, like us, wives and children, whose happiness and whose fortune he is risking. He stakes only his own life, and he holds that as cheaply as is usual at 20 years of age. But with his life he risks ours. And yet, let him say but one word showing a justification, and I will be the first to open my arms to him. Well, Marquis, said Gaston, after a few moments' silence, follow me, and you shall be satisfied. And we? Asked Montlewis and Du Quetic. Come. Also, you are all gentlemen. I risk no more and confide in my secret to all than to one. The Marquis called Telouet, who had kept good watch, and now rejoined the group and followed without asking what had passed. All 5 went on but slowly, for Gaston's horse was lame. The Chevalier guided them toward the convent, then to the little rivulet, and at 10 paces from the iron gate he stopped. It is here, said he. Here. At the convent? Yes, my friends, there is here at this moment a young girl whom I have loved since I saw her a year ago in procession at the fête dieu at Nantes. She observed me also. I followed her and sent her a letter. But how do you see her? Asked the Marquis. 800 Lewis won the gardener over to my interest. He has given me a key to this gate. In the summer, I come in a boat to the convent wall. 10 feet above the water is a window where she awaits me. If it were lighter, you could see it from this spot. And in spite of the darkness, I see it now. Yes, I understand how you manage in summer, but you cannot use the boat now. True, but instead there's a coating of ice on which I shall go this evening. Perhaps it will break and engulf me. So much the better, for then I hope your suspicions would die with me. You have taken a load from my breast, said Mont Louis. Ah, my poor Gaston, how happy you make me. For remember, Duke Edic, and I answer for you. Chevalier, said the Marquis, pardon and embrace us. Willingly, Marquis, but you have destroyed a portion of my happiness. How so? I wish my love to have been known to no one. I have so much need of strength and courage. Am I not to leave her tonight forever? Who knows, Chevalier? You look gloomily at the future. I know what I am saying, Mont Louis. If you succeed, and with your courage in sang-froid you ought to succeed, France is free. Then she will owe her liberty to you, and you will be master of your own fate. Ah, Marquis, if I succeed, it will be for you. My own fate is fixed. Courage, Chevalier! Meanwhile, let us see how you manage these love affairs. Still mistrust, Marquis? Still, my dear Gaston, I mistrust myself, and naturally enough, after being named your chief, all the responsibility rests on me, and I must watch over you all. At least, Marquis, I am as anxious to reach the foot of that wall as you can be to see me, so I shall not keep you waiting long. Gaston tied his horse to a tree by means of a plank thrown across. He passed the stream, opened the gate, and then, following the palisade so as to get away from the stream, he stepped upon the ice, which cracked under his feet. In heaven's name, cried Mont Louis, be prudent. Look, Marquis, said Gaston. I believe you, Gaston. You give me fresh courage, replied the Chevalier. And now, Gaston, one word more. When shall you leave? Tomorrow at this time, Marquis. I shall probably be 30 leagues on the way to Paris. Come back and let us embrace and say adieu. With pleasure. Gaston retraced his steps and was embraced cordially by each of the chevaliers, who did not turn away till they saw that he had arrived safely at the end of his perilous journey. Chapter 4. Showing how chance arranges some matters better than Providence. In spite of the cracking of the ice, Gaston pursued his way boldly and perceived with a beating heart that the winter rains had raised the waters of the little lake, so that he might possibly be able to reach the window. He was not mistaken. On giving the signal, the window was opened. Then a head appeared nearly at the level of his own, and a hand touched his. It was the first time. Gaston seized it and covered it with kisses. Gaston, you have come, in spite of the cold and on the ice. I told you in my letter not to do so. With your letter on my heart, Helene, I think I can run no danger. But what have you to tell me? You have been crying. Alas, since this morning I have done little else. Since this morning, said Gaston with a sad smile. That is strange. If I were not a man, I too should have cried since this morning. What do you say, Gaston? Nothing. Tell me, what are your griefs, Helene? Alas, you know I am not my own mistress. I am a poor orphan brought up here, having no other world than the convent. I have never seen anyone to whom I can give the names of father or mother. My mother I believe to be dead, and my father is absent. I depend upon an invisible power, revealed only to our superior. This morning the good mother sent for me, and announced with tears in her eyes that I was to leave. To leave the convent, Helene? Yes, my family reclaims me, Gaston. Your family? Alas, what new misfortune awaits us? Yes, it is a misfortune, Gaston. Our good mother at first congratulated me, as if it were a pleasure, but I was happy here, and wished to remain till I became your wife. I am otherwise disposed of, but how? And this order to remove you admits of neither dispute nor delay. Alas, it seems that I belong to a powerful family, and that I am the daughter of some great nobleman. When the good mother told me I must leave, I burst into tears and fell on my knees and said I would not leave her. Then, suspecting that I had some hidden motive, she pressed me, questioned me, And forgive me, Gaston. I want to confide in someone. I felt the want of pity and consolation, and I told her all that we love each other, all except the manner in which we meet. I was afraid if I told her that she would prevent my seeing you this last time to say adieu. But did you not tell, Helene, what were my plans? That, bound to an association myself for 6 months, perhaps for a year, at the end of that time, the very day I should be free, my name, my fortune, my very life was yours? I told her, Gaston, and this is what makes me think I am the daughter of some powerful nobleman. For then Mother Ursula replied, You must forget the Chevalier, my child, for who knows that your new family will consent to your marrying him. But do not I belong to one of the oldest families in Brittany? And though I am not rich, my fortune is independent. Did you say this, Helene? Yes. I said to her, Gaston chose me, an orphan, without name and without fortune. I may be separated from him, but it would be cruel ingratitude to forget him, and I shall never do so. Helene, you are an angel, and you cannot then imagine who are your parents, or to what you are destined. No, it seems that it is a secret on which all my future happiness depends. Only, Gaston, I fear they are high in station, for it almost appeared as if our superiors spoke to me with deference. To you, Helene? Yes. So much the better, said Gaston, sighing. Do you rejoice at our separation, Gaston? No, Helene, but I rejoice that you should find a family when you are about to lose a friend. Lose a friend, Gaston. I have none but you. Whom then should I lose? At least, I must leave you for some time, Helene. What do you mean? I mean that fate has endeavored to make our lots similar, and that you are not the only one who does not know what the morrow may bring forth. Gaston, what does this strange language mean? That I also am subject to fatality which I must obey, that I also am governed by an irresistible and superior power. Oh heavens, to a power which may condemn me to leave you in a week, in a fortnight, in a month, and not only to leave you, but to leave France. Ah, Gaston, will you tell me, what in my love, or rather my egotism, I have dreaded to tell you before? I shut my eyes to this hour, and yet I knew that it must come. This morning they were opened. I must leave you, Helene. But why? What have you undertaken? What will become of you? Alas! Helene, we each have our secret, said the Chevalier, sorrowfully. I pray that yours may be less terrible than mine. Gaston, were you not the first to say that we must part, Helene? Had not you first the courage to renounce me? Well, blessings on you for that courage, for I, Helene, had it not. And at these last words the young man again pressed his lips to her hand, and Helene could see that tears stood in his eyes. Oh, mon Dieu, murmured she, how have we deserved this misery? At this exclamation Gaston raised his head. Come, said he, as if to himself, courage! It is useless to struggle against these necessities. Let us obey without a murmur, and perhaps our resignation may disarm our fate. Can I see you again? I fear not. I leave tomorrow. And on what road? To Paris. Good heavens, cried Gaston. And I also... You also, Gaston? Yes, Helene. We were mistaken. We need not part. Oh, Gaston, is it true? Helene, we had no right to accuse Providence. Not only could we see each other on the journey, but at Paris we will not be separated. How do you travel? In the convent carriage, with post horses and by short stages. Who goes with you? A nun, who will return to the convent when she has delivered me over to those who await me. All is for the best. Helene, I shall go on horseback, as a stranger, unknown to you. Each evening I may speak to you, or if I cannot do so, I shall at least see you. It will be but a half separation. And the two lovers, with the buoyant hopes of youth, after meeting with tears and sadness, parted with smiles and joyous confidence in the future. Gaston recrossed a frozen lake and found, instead of his own wounded horse, that of Montlouis, and, thanks to this kindness, reached Nantes safely in less than 3/4 of an hour. Chapter 5. The Journey. That very night Gaston made his will, and deposited it with a notary at Nantes. He left everything to Helene de Chaverny, begged her, if he died, not to renounce the world, but to accept the career opening to her youth and beauty. But, as he was the last of his family, he begged her, in memory of him, to call her first son Gaston. He next went to see each of his friends, and once more told them that he believed the enterprise would be successful. Pontcalec gave him half a piece of gold and a letter, which he was to present to a certain Captain La Jonquière, their correspondent at Paris, who would put Gaston in communication with the important persons he went to seek. He then put all the ready money he had into a valise, and, accompanied only by an old servant named Owen, in whom he had great confidence, he set out from Nantes. It was midday. A bright sun shone on the stream and sparkled on the icicles which hung from the leafless trees, as Gaston made his way along the deserted road, looking in vain for anything resembling the convent carriage. The servant appeared much more anxious to quicken their pace than Gaston himself did. For him the journey was fraught with annoyances, and he was so anxious to arrive at that Paris of which he had heard such wonderful tales, that, had it been possible, he would willingly have added wings to their horses' feet. Gaston, however, traveled slowly as far as Udon, but the convent carriage proceeded more slowly still. At Udon he halted. He chose the Charcoran, a house which had some windows overlooking the road, and which, moreover, was the best inn in the village. While his dinner was preparing, Gaston, in spite of the cold, remained in the balcony, but in vain he looked for the carriage he so much wished to see. Then he thought that perhaps Helene had preceded him and was already in the inn. He went at once to a window at the back, overlooking the courtyard, to inspect the carriages standing there. His attention was arrested by seeing, not the carriage, but his servant, Owen, speaking earnestly to a man dressed in gray and wrapped in a sort of military cloak, who, after a short conversation, mounted his horse and rode off with the air of a man to whom speed is of the utmost importance, as Gaston heard his steps along the road to Paris. At this moment the servant raised his eyes, and began busily brushing the snow from his boots and clothes. Gaston signed to him to approach. "Who were you talking with, Owen?" "To a man, M. Gaston." "Who is that man?" "A traveler, a soldier, who was asking his way." "His way? To what place?" "To Rennes." "But you could not tell him, for you do not know this place." "I asked the landlord, monsieur." "Why could not he ask himself?" "Because he had had a quarrel with him about the price of his dinner, and did not wish to speak to him again." "Hum," said Gaston. Nothing was more natural than this, yet Gaston became thoughtful. But he quickly threw off his suspicions, accusing himself of becoming timid at a time when he most needed courage. His brow remained clouded, however, for the carriage did not appear. He thought at one moment that Helene might have chosen another road in order to part from him without noise or quarrel, but he soon concluded that it was only some accident which delayed her. He sat down again to table, though he had finished his dinner, and when Owen appeared to clear away, "Some wine," said he. Owen had already removed a half-empty bottle. "Some wine," repeated the servant in astonishment, for Gaston usually drank but little. "Yes, some wine. Is there anything surprising in that?" "No, monsieur," replied Owen, and he transmitted the order for a second bottle of wine to the waiter. Gaston poured out a glass, drank it, then a second. Owen stared. Then, thinking it both his duty and his interest to prevent his master's finishing the bottle, "Monsieur," said he, "I have heard that if you are riding, it is bad to drink when it is very cold. You forgot that we have a long way to go, and that it will be getting still colder, and if we wait much longer, we shall get no post horses. It is nearly 3 o'clock now, and at 4:30 it will be dark." This behavior surprised Gaston. "You are in a very great hurry, Owen," said he. "Have you a rendezvous with a man who is asking his way of you?" "Monsieur knows that be impossible," replied Owen, "since he is going to Rennes and we to Paris." However, under the scrutinizing gaze of his master, Owen turned red, when suddenly, at the sound of wheels, Gaston ran to the window. It was a dark carriage. At this sight, Gaston darted from the room. It was then Owen's turn to run to the window, to see what it was that had so much interested his master. He saw a green and black carriage stop, for which the driver alighted and opened the door. Then he saw a young lady in a cloak go into the hotel, followed by an Augustine sister. The two ladies, announcing that they should only remain to dine, asked for a room. But to reach this room they had to cross a public salon, in which Gaston stood near the fireplace, A rapid but meaning glance was exchanged between him and Helene, and, to Gaston's great satisfaction, he recognized in the driver of the carriage the convent gardener. He let him pass, however, unnoticed, but as he crossed the yard to go to the stable, he followed him. He accosted the gardener, who told him that he was to take the two ladies to Rambouillet, where Helene would remain, and then he was to take back Sister Therese to Clisson. Gaston, raising his eyes suddenly, saw Owen watching him, and this curiosity displeased him. "What are you doing there?" asked he. "Waiting for orders," said Owen. "Do you know that fellow?" asked Gaston the gardener. Owen, your servant?" "Of course I do. We are from the same place." "So much the worse," murmured Gaston. "Oh, Owen is an honest fellow." "Never mind," said Gaston. "Not a word, Helene, I beg," the gardener promised. And, indeed, it was his own interest to keep the secret, for had it been discovered that he had given Gaston the key, he would have lost his place. After a hasty meal, the carriage was again ordered, and at the door Gaston met the ladies and handed them in. Chanley was not quite unknown to the sister, so she thanked him graciously as he handed her in. "Monsieur," said Owen behind the Chevalier, "our horses are ready." "One more glass," said Gaston, "and I shall start." To Owen's great surprise, Gaston returned to the room and ordered a third bottle, for Owen had removed the second, of which Gaston had only drank his 2 glasses. Gaston remained about a quarter of an hour, and then, having no further motive for waiting, he set out. When they had ridden a short distance, they saw the carriage embedded in a deep rut, where, in spite of the efforts of the horses and the gardener, it remained stationary. Gaston could not leave him in such a dilemma, and the gardener, recognizing Owen, called to him for aid. The 2 riders dismounted, opened the carriage door, took out the ladies, and succeeded in freeing the carriage, so that they were able to proceed. An acquaintanceship was thus established, and the poor nun, who was very timid, inquired of Gaston if the road were safe. Gaston reassured her, and said that he and his servant would escort them, and his offer was at once accepted with thanks. Meanwhile, Helene had played her part admirably, showing that a young girl, however simple and naive, has the instinct of dissimulation, which only requires opportunity to develop itself. Gaston rode along close to the door, for the road was narrow, and Sister Therese asked him many questions. She learned that he was called the Chevalier de Livry, and was the brother of one of the young ladies who had been in the convent school, but who was now married to Montlouis. They stopped, as previously arranged, at Ancinous. The gardener confirmed what Gaston had said of his relationship to Mademoiselle de Livry, so that Sister Therese had no suspicion, and was very friendly with him. She was, in fact, delighted on starting the next morning to find him already mounted and to receive his accustomed politeness in handing them into the carriage. As he did so, he slipped a note into Helene's hand, and by a glance she told him he should receive a reply. Gaston rode by the side of the carriage, for the road was bad, and assistance was frequently required, either to free a wheel, to assist the ladies to alight for the purpose of walking up a steep ascent, or some of the many accidents of a journey. "My dear Helene," said Sister Therese several times, "what would have become of us without the aid of this gentleman?" Before arriving at Angers, Gaston inquired at what hotel they were going to stay, and, finding that it was the same at which he intended to put up, he sent Owen on before to engage apartments. When they arrived, he received a note which Helene had written during dinner. She spoke of her love and happiness as though they were secure and everlasting. But Gaston looked on the future in its true light. Bound by an oath to undertake a terrible mission, he foresaw sad misfortunes after their present short-lived joy. He remembered that he was about to lose happiness, just as he had tasted it for the first time, and rebelled against his fate. He did not remember that he had sought the conspiracy which now bound him, and which forced him to pursue a path leading to exile or the scaffold, while he had in sight another path which would lead him direct to happiness. It is true that when Gaston joined the conspiracy, he did not know Helene, and thought himself alone in the world. At 20 years of age, he had believed that the world had no pleasure for him. Then he had met Helene, and the world became full of pleasure and hope, but was too late. He had already entered on a career from which he could not draw back. Meanwhile, in the preoccupation of his mind, Gaston had quite forgotten his suspicions of Owen, and had not noticed that he had spoken to 2 cavaliers similar to the one whom he had seen the first evening, But Owen lost nothing of what passed between Gaston and Helene. As they approached the end of their journey, Gaston became sad, and when the landlord at Chartres replied to the question of Sister Therese, "Tomorrow you may, if you choose, reach Rambouillet," it was as though it said, "Tomorrow you separate forever." Helene, who loved as women love, with the strength, or rather the weakness, to sacrifice everything to that love, could not understand Gaston's passive submission to the decrees of Providence, and she would prefer to have seen him make some effort to combat them. But Helene was in this unjust Gaston. The same ideas tormented him. He knew that at a word from him, Helene would follow him to the end of the world. He had plenty of gold. It would be easy for Helene one evening, instead of going to rest, to go with him into a post-chaise, and in 2 days they would be beyond the frontier, free and happy, not for a day or a month, but forever. But one word, one little word, opposed itself to all this. That word was honor. He had given his oath, and he would be disgraced if he did not keep it. The last evening Helene expected that Gaston would speak, but in vain, and she retired to rest with the conviction that Gaston did not love her as she loved him. That night Gaston never slept, and he rose pale and despairing. They breakfasted at a little village. The nun thought that in the evening she would begin her homeward journey toward her beloved convent. Helene thought that it was now too late to act, even if Gaston should speak. Gaston thought that he was about to lose forever the woman whom he loved. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they all alighted to walk up a steep hill, from the summit of which they could see before them a steeple and a number of houses. It was Rambouillet. They did not know it, but they felt that it was. Gaston was the first to break the silence. "There," said he, "our paths separate. Helene, I implore you preserve the recollection of me, and whatever happens, do not condemn or curse me. Gaston, you only speak of the most terrible things. I need courage, and you take it from me. Have you nothing joyful to tell me? I know the present is dark, but is the future also as dreadful? Are there not many years, and therefore many hopes, to look forward to? We are young. We love one another. Are there no means of struggling against a fate which threatens us? Oh, Gaston, I feel in myself a great strength, and if you but say, 'But no, I am mad,' it is I who suffer, and yet I who console. I understand you. Helene, you want a promise, do you not? Well, judge if I am wretched. I dare not promise. You tell me to hope, and I can but despair. If I had 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, at my own disposal, I would offer them to you, Helene, and think myself blessed, but from the moment I leave you, we lose each other. From tomorrow morning, I belong no more to myself." "Oh," cried Helene, "unhappy that I am. Did you then deceive me when you said you loved me? Are you pledged to another?" "At least, my poor Helene," said Gaston, "on this point I can reassure you. I have no other love." "Then we may yet be happy, Gaston, if my new family will recognize you as my husband. Helene, do you not see that every word you utter stabs at the heart? But at least tell me what it is." "Fate, which I cannot escape, ties which I dare not break." "I know of none such," cried the young girl. "I am promised a family, riches, station, and a name, and yet, Gaston, say but one word and I leave them all for you. Why, then, will you not do as much for me?" Gaston answered not, and at this moment Sister Therese rejoined them, and they again got into the carriage. When they neared the town, the nun called Gaston, told him that, perhaps, someone might come to meet Helene, and that a stranger should not be seen with them. Gaston bowed silently and sadly, and turned to leave them. Helene was no ordinary woman. She saw Gaston's distress. "Is it adieu or au revoir?" cried she boldly. "Au revoir," said Gaston, and he rode off quickly. Chapter 6. A room in the hotel at Rambouillet. Gaston went away without saying how they were to meet again. But Helene thought that he would certainly manage that, and she contented herself with watching him as long as she could. 10 minutes later the carriage stopped at the Tigre Royal. A woman, who was waiting, came out hastily and respectfully assisted the ladies to alight, and then guided them to the passages of the hotel, preceded by a valet carrying lights. A door opened. Madame Desroches drew back to allow Helene and Sister Therese to pass, and they soon found themselves on a soft and easy sofa, in front of a bright fire. The room was large and well furnished, but the taste was severe, for the style called Rococo was not yet introduced. There were 4 doors. The first was by which they had entered. The second led to the dining room, which was already lighted and warmed. The third led into a richly appointed bedroom. The fourth did not open. Helene admired the magnificence of all around her, the quiet and respectful manner of the servants, while Sister Therese rejoiced, when she saw the smoking supper, that it was not a fast day. Presently Madame de Roche returned, and approaching the sister, handed her a letter. She opened it and read as follows: Sister Therese may pass the night at Rambouillet, or leave again at once, according to her own wish. She will receive 200 louis offered to convent by Helene, and will give up her charge to the care of Madame de Roche, who is honored by the confidence of Helene's parents. At the bottom of the letter, instead of the signature, was a cipher, which the sister compared that on a letter which she had brought from Clisson, the identity being proved. "My child," said she, "I leave you after supper." "So soon," said Helene, to whom Therese was now the only link to her past life. "Yes, my child. It is at my option to sleep here, but I prefer to return at once, for I wish to be again at home, where the only thing wanting to my happiness will be your presence." Helene threw herself on Therese's neck, weeping. She recalled her youth, passed so happily among affectionate companions, and she again saw the towers and steeples of her former residence. They sat down at table, and Sister Therese hastily partook of some refreshment, then embraced Helene, who wished to accompany her to the carriage. But Madame de Roche begged her not to do so, as the hotel was full of strangers. Helene then asked permission to see the poor gardener, who had been their escort, once more. This man had become a friend to her, and she quitted him and Therese sadly. Madame de Roche, seeing that Helene felt vainly in her pocket, said, "Does Mademoiselle want anything?" "Yes," said Helene. "I should wish to give a souvenir to this good man." Madame de Roche gave Helene 25 louis, and she, without counting them, slipped them into the gardener's hand, who overwhelmed her with tears and thanks. At length they were forced apart, and Helene, hearing the sound of their carriage driving away, threw herself on a sofa, weeping. Madame de Roche reminded her that she had eaten nothing. Helene insisted that she should sup with her. After her meal, she showed Helene her bedroom, saying, "Will Mademoiselle ring when she requires her femme de chambre? For this evening Mademoiselle will receive a visit." "A visit?" cried Helene. "Yes, Mademoiselle, from a relation." "And is it the one who watches over me?" "From your birth, Mademoiselle." "Oh, mon Dieu!" cried Helene. "And he is coming?" "He is most anxious to know you." "Oh!" murmured Helene. "I feel as if I should faint." Madame de Roche ran to her and supported her. "Do you feel so much terror," asked she, "at seeing one who loves you?" "It is not terror, it is agitation," said Helene. "I did not know that it would be tonight, and this important news quite overcomes me. But I have not told you all. This person is necessarily surrounded by mystery." "Why so?" "I am forbidden to reply to that question, Mademoiselle." "What necessity can there be for such precautions with a poor orphan like me?" "They are necessary, believe me. But in what do they consist?" "Firstly, you may not see the face of this person, so that you may not recognize him if you meet him in the world." "Then he will come masked?" "No, Mademoiselle, but the lights will be extinguished." "Then we shall be in darkness?" "Yes." "But you will remain with me, Madame de Roche." "No, Mademoiselle, that is expressly forbidden." "By whom?" "By the person who is coming." "But do you, then, owe such absolute obedience to this person?" "More than that, Mademoiselle, I owe him the deepest respect." "Is he, then, of such high station?" "He is of the very highest in France." "And he is my relation?" "The nearest." "For heaven's sake, Madame de Roche, do not leave me in uncertainty on this point." "I have already told you, Mademoiselle, that there are some questions to which I am expressly forbidden to reply." And she was about to retire. "Why do you leave me?" asked Helene. "I leave you to your toilet." "But, Madame—" Madame de Roche made a low, ceremonious curtsy and went out of the room, closing the door behind her. Chapter 7. A servant in the royal liveried, Monseigneur le Duc d'Orleans. While the things which we have related were passing in the parlor of the Hotel Tigre Royal, In another apartment of the same hotel, seated near a large fire, was a man shaking the snow from his boots and untying the strings of a large portfolio. This man was dressed in the hunting livery of the House of Orleans, the coat red and silver, large boots, and a three-corner hat trimmed with silver. He had a quick eye, a long pointed nose, a round and open forehead, which was contradicted by thin and compressed lips. This man murmured to himself some phrases, which he interrupted by oaths and exclamations, which seemed less the result of words and thoughts. "Come, come," said he. "M. de Montaigne did not deceive me, and our Bretons are hard at the work. But for what earthly reason can it come by such short stages? He left at noon on the 11th, and only arrived on the evening of the 21st. This probably hides some new mystery, which will be explained by the fellow recommended by Montaigne, and with whom my people were in communication on the journey. Hola!" And he rang a silver bell. A man, dressed in gray, like those we have seen on the route, appeared. "Ah, it is you, Tappan?" "Yes, Monseigneur. The affair being important, I thought it better to come myself. Have you questioned the men you placed on the road?" "Yes, Monseigneur, but they know nothing but the places at which our conspirators stopped. In fact, that is all they were told to learn. I will try to learn from the servant. What sort of man is he?" "Oh, a mischievous simpleton, half Norman, half Breton, a bad fellow." "What is he about now?" "Serving his master's supper." "Whom, I hope, they have placed as I desired." "Yes, Monseigneur." "In a room without curtains?" "Yes, Monseigneur." "And you have made a hole in the shutter?" "Yes, Monseigneur." "Well, then, send me the servant, and remain within call." The man in the red coat consulted his watch. "8:30, said he. "At this hour, Monseigneur, the Regent returns to St. Germain's and asks for Dubois. As Dubois is not there, he rubs his hands and prepares for some folly." "Rub your hands, Philippe d'Orleans, and amuse yourself at your pleasure, for the danger is not at Paris, but here. We shall see if you will laugh at my secret police this time. Ah, here is our man." At this moment Tappan introduced Owen. "Here is the person you wish to see," said he. Owen remained standing, trembling, near the door, while Dubois wrapped himself in a large cloak, which left only the upper part of his face visible to him, on whom he fixed his cat-like eyes. "Approach, my friend," said Dubois. In spite of the cordiality of this invitation, it was given in so harsh a voice that Owen would have preferred being at a greater distance from this man, who looked at him so strangely. "Well, fellow," said Dubois, seeing that he did not stir, "did you not hear me?" "Yes, Monseigneur," said Owen. "Then why do you not obey?" "I did not know you spoke to me." And Owen then stepped forward. "You have received 50 louis to speak the truth to me," continued Dubois. "Pardon, Monseigneur," said Owen, who began to recover his composure. "I have not received them. They were promised to me, but—" Dubois took a handful of gold from his pocket, counted 50 louis, and placed them in a pile on the table. Owen looked at the pile with an expression of which one would have supposed his dull countenance incapable. "Good," thought Dubois, "he is avaricious." In reality, the 50 louis had always appeared very doubtful to Owen. He had betrayed his master with scarcely a hope of obtaining his reward, and now the promised gold was before his eyes. "May I take them?" asked Owen, spreading his hand toward them. "Wait a moment," said Dubois, who amused himself by exciting that cupidity which any but a peasant would have concealed. "We will make a bargain." "What is it?" asked Owen. "Here are the 50 louis." "I see them," said Owen, passing his tongue over his lips like a thirsty dog. "At every answer you make to a question of mine, I either add 10 louis if it is important, or take them away if it is unimportant and stupid." Owen started. He did not like the terms. "Now," said Dubois, "let us talk. What place have you come from?" "Direct from Nantes." "With whom?" "With the Chevalier Gaston de Chanley." These being preliminary questions, the pile remained undisturbed. "Listen," said Dubois. "I am all attention. Did your master travel under his own name?" "He set out in his own name, but changed it on the journey." "What name did he take?" "M. de Livry." Dubois added 10 louis, but as they would not stand on the others, He commenced a second pile. Owen uttered a joyful cry. "Oh," said Du Bois, "do not exult yet. We are not near the end. Is there a M. de Livry at Nantes?" "No, Monseigneur, but there is a Demoiselle de Livry." "Who is she?" "The wife of M. de Montlouis, an intimate friend of my master." "Good," said Du Bois, adding 10 louis. "And what was your master doing at Nantes?" "What most young men do. He hunted, danced, and so on." Du Bois took away 10 louis. Owen shuddered. "Stop," said he. "He did something else." "Ah, what was that?" "I do not know," replied Owen. Du Bois held the 10 louis in his hand. "And since his departure, what has he done?" "He passed through Udine and Senus, Le Mans, Nogent, and Chartres." Du Bois stretched out his hand and took up another 10 louis. Owen uttered a dolorous cry. "And did he make no acquaintance en route?" "Yes, with a young lady from the Augustine convent at Clisson, who was traveling with a sister of the convent named Therese." "And what was the young lady called?" "Mademoiselle Helene de Chaverny." "Helene, a promising name. Doubtless, she is your master's mistress." "I do not know," said Owen. "He would not have told me." "He is a shrewd fellow," said Du Bois, taking 10 louis from the 50. Owen trembled. For such answers, and he would betray his master for nothing. "And these ladies are going to Paris with him?" "No, Monseigneur, they stop at Rambouillet." "Ah," said Du Bois. The tone of this exclamation gave Owen some hope. "Come," said Du Bois, "all this is not very important, but one must encourage beginners." And he added 10 louis to the pile. "Sister Therese," continued Owen, "is already gone home." "So that the young lady remains alone?" "No," answered Owen. "How so?" "A lady from Paris awaited her." "From Paris?" "Yes." "Do you know her name?" "I heard Sister Therese call her Madame Desroches." "Madame Desroches," cried Du Bois, and he began another pile with 10 louis. "Yes," replied Owen, delighted. "Are you sure?" "Of course I am. She is a tall, thin, yellow-looking woman." Du Bois added 10 louis. Owen thought that if he had made an interval between each adjective, he might have had 20 louis. "Thin, tall, yellow," repeated Du Bois. "Just so." "From 40 to 45, added Owen. "Exactly," said Du Bois, adding 10 louis. "In a silk dress, with large flowers on it." "Very good," said Du Bois. Owen saw that his questioner knew enough about the lady and waited. "And you say that your master made acquaintance with the young lady en route?" "Yes, monsieur, but I think it was a farce." "What do you mean?" "I mean that they knew each other before, and I am sure of one thing, that my master waited for her 3 hours at Udine." "Bravo," said Du Bois, adding 10 louis. "We should make something of you." "You do not wish to know anything more, then?" asked Owen, extending his hand toward the 2 piles of gold. "Stop," said Du Bois. "Is the young lady pretty?" "Beautiful as an angel," answered Owen. "And no doubt they made an appointment to meet in Paris?" "No, monsieur. I think they said adieu forever." "Another farce." "I do not think so, monsieur. My master was so sad when they separated." "And they are not to meet again?" "Yes, once more, I think, and all will be over." "Well, take your money, and remember that if you mention one word of this, in 10 minutes you will be a dead man." Owen snatched the money, which disappeared in his pocket instantly. "And now," said he, "may I go?" "No, idiot. From this moment you belong to me, for I have bought you, and you will be more useful to me at Paris than elsewhere." "In that case I will remain, monsieur, I promise." "There is no need to promise." At this moment the door opened, and Tappan appeared, looking very much agitated. "What has happened now?" asked Du Bois. "Something very important, Monseigneur, but send away this man." "Return to your master," said Du Bois, "and if he writes to anyone whatever, remember that I am most anxious to see his writing." Owen went out, delighted to be set free. "Well, Tappan," said Du Bois, "what is it?" "Monseigneur, after the hunt at St. Germain's, His Royal Highness, instead of returning to Paris, sent away everyone, and gave orders to proceed to Rambouillet." The Regent coming to Rambouillet. He will be here in half an hour, and would have been here now, if hunger had not luckily obliged him to enter the chateau and procure some refreshment. And what is he coming to Rambouillet for? I do not know, Monseigneur, unless it be for the young girl who has just arrived with none, and who is now in the pavilion of the hotel. You are right, Tappan. It is doubtless for her, and Madame de Roche, too. Did you know that Madame de Roche was here? No, Monseigneur, I did not. And are you sure that your information is correct, my dear Tappan? Oh, Monseigneur, it was from Livier, whom I place near His Royal Highness, and what he says is gospel truth. You are right, said Du Bois, who seemed to know the qualities of this man. If it be Livier, there is no doubt. The poor fellow has lamed his horse, which fell near Rambouillet. 30 louis for the horse. He may gain what he can of it. Tappan took the 30 louis. You know the situation of the pavilion, do you not? Perfectly. Where is it? One side looks on the second courtyard, the other on a deserted lane. Place men in the courtyard and in the lane. Disguise as stablemen or how you please. Let no one enter the pavilion but Monseigneur and myself. The life of His Royal Highness is at stake. Rest easy, Monseigneur. Do you know our Breton? I saw him dismount. Do your men know him? They all saw him on the road. Well, I recommend him to you. Shall we arrest him? Certainly not. He must be allowed to go where he pleases and act as he pleases, and he must have every opportunity to do so. If he were arrested now, he would tell nothing, and our plans would be disconcerted. No, no, these plans must hatch. Hatch what, Monseigneur? Said Tappan, who appeared to be on confidential terms with Du Bois. My Archbishop's mitre am leccic, said Du Bois, and now to your work. I go to mine. Both left the room and descended the staircase, but separated at the door. Leccic went along the Rue de Paris, and Du Bois, slipping along by the wall, went to peep to the hole in the shutter. Chapter 8. The Utility of a Seal. Gaston had just supped, for at his age, whether a man be in despair or in love, nature asserts her rights. He was leaning on the table, thoughtfully. The lamp threw a light over his face, and enabled Du Bois to gratify his curiosity. He looked at him with an attention almost alarming. His quick eye darted, his lip curled with a smile, which gave one the idea of a demon smiling at the sight of one of those victims who seemed to vow their own perdition. While looking, he murmured, young, handsome, black eyes, proud lips. He is a Breton. He is not corrupted, like the conspirators of Celamare, by the soft glances of the ladies at court. Then the other spoke of carrying off, dethroning, but this one, diable, this one, and yet, continued he after pause, I look in vain for traces of cunning on that open brow. I see no Machiavellism in the corners of that mouth, so full of loyalty and honor. Yet no doubt all is arranged to surprise the Regent on his visit to this Clisson demoiselle, who will say again that Bretons have dull brains. No, said Du Bois after another pause, it cannot be so. It is impossible that this young man with his calm, sad face should be ready in a quarter of an hour to kill a man, and that man the first prince of the blood. No, I cannot believe in such sang-froid, and yet the Regent has kept this amourette secret even from me. He goes out to hunt at St. Germain's, announces aloud that he shall sleep at the Palais Royal, then all at once gives counter-orders, and drives to Rambouillet. At Rambouillet, the young girl waits, and is received by Madame de Roche. Who can she be watching for, if not for the Regent? And this young girl is the mistress of the Chevalier, but is she? Ah, we must learn. We must find out how far we can depend on Owen. And Du Bois left his observatory and waited on the staircase. He was quite hidden in the shade, and he could see Gaston's door in the light. The door presently opened, and Owen appeared. He held a letter in his hands, and after hesitating a minute, he appeared to have taken his determination, and mounted the staircase. Good, said Du Bois. He has tasted the forbidden fruit, and he is mine. Then, stopping Owen, give me the letter which you were bringing me, and wait here. How did you know I had a letter? Asked Owen, bewildered. Du Bois shrugged his shoulders, took the letter, and disappeared. In his room, he examined the seal. The Chevalier, who had no wax, had used that on the bottle, and had sealed it with the stone of a ring. Du Bois held the letter above the candle, and the wax melted. He opened the letter and read, "Dear Helene, your courage is double mine. Manage so that I can enter the house, and you shall know my plans." "Oh," said Du Bois, "it seems she does not know them yet. Things are not as far advanced as I supposed." He resealed the letter with one of the numerous rings which he wore, and which resembled that of the Chevalier, and calling Owen, "Here," said he, "is your master's letter. Deliver it faithfully. Bring me the answer, and you shall have 10 louis. "Ah," thought Owen, "has this man a mine of gold?" And he went off. 10 minutes after he returned with the reply. It was on scented and ornamented paper, sealed with the letter H. Du Bois opened the box, took out a kind of paste in which he was about to take the impression of the seal, when he observed that from the manner in which it was folded, he could read it without opening. It was as follows: "The person who sent for me at Bretagne is coming to meet me here, instead of waiting at Paris. So impatient is he, I am told, to see me. I think he will leave again tonight. Come tomorrow morning before 9. I will tell you all that has passed, and then we can arrange how to act." "This," said Du Bois, still taking Helene for the Chevalier's accomplice, "makes it clearer. If this is the way they bring up young ladies at Clisson, I congratulate them and Monseigneur, who, from her age, concludes her to be simple and ingenuous. Here," said he to Owen, "here's the letter and your 10 louis." Owen took them. At this moment 10 o'clock struck, and the rolling of a carriage was heard. Du Bois went to the window and saw it stop at the hotel door. In the carriage was a gentleman whom Du Bois at once recognized as Lefebvre, captain of His Royal Highness's guards. "Well," said he is more prudent than I thought. But where is he?" "Ah!" This exclamation was uttered at the sight of a man dressed in the same red livery which he himself concealed under his cloak, and who followed the carriage mounted on a superb Spanish jennet, which, however, he could not have ridden long, for while the carriage horses were covered with foam, this one was quite fresh. Lefebvre at once demanded a room and supper. Meanwhile the man dismounted, threw the reins to a page, and went toward the pavilion. "Well," said Du Bois, "all this is as clear as a mountain stream, but how is it that the face of Chevalier does not appear? Is he too much occupied with his chicken to have heard the carriage? Let us see. As to you, Monseigneur," continued Du Bois, "be assured I will not disturb your tête-à-tête. Enjoy at your pleasure this commencement of ingenuity, which promises such happy results. Ah, Monseigneur, it is certain that you are short-sighted." Du Bois went down, and again took up his post at his observatory. As he approached it, Gaston rose, after putting his note in his pocketbook. "Ah," said Du Bois, "I must have that pocketbook. I would pay high for it. He is going out, he buckles on his sword. He looks for his cloak. Where is he going? Let us see. To wait for His Royal Highness's exit? No, no, that is not the face of a man who is going to kill another. I could sooner believe he was about to spend the evening under the windows of his sweetheart. Ah, if he had that idea, it would be a means. It would be difficult to render the expression which passed over the face of Du Bois at this moment. Yes, but if I were to get a sword thrust in the enterprise, how Monseigneur would laugh. Bah, there is no danger. Our men are at their post, and besides, nothing venture, nothing gain." Encouraged by this reflection, Du Bois made the circuit of the hotel, in order to appear at one end of the little lane as Gaston appeared at the other. As he had expected, at the end of the lane he found Tapin, who had placed Olivier in the courtyard. In 2 words he explained his project. Tapin pointed out to Du Bois one man leaning on the step of an outer door, a second was playing a kind of Jew's harp, and seemed an itinerant musician, and there was another, too well hidden to be seen. Du Bois, thus sure of support, returned into the lane. He soon perceived a figure at the other end, and at once recognized the Chevalier, who was too thoughtful even to notice that he was passing any one. Du Bois wanted to quarrel, and he saw that he must take the initiative. He turned and stopped before the Chevalier, who was trying to discover which were the windows of the room in which Helene was. "My friend," said he roughly, "what are you doing at this hour before this house?" Gaston was obliged to bring back his thoughts to the materialism of life. "Did you speak to me, monsieur?" said he. "Yes," replied Du Bois. "I asked what you were doing here." "Pass on," said the Chevalier. "I do not interfere with you. Do not interfere with me." That might be, said Du Bois, if your presence did not annoy me. This lane, narrow as it is wide enough for both, monsieur. Walk on one side, and I will walk on the other. I wish to walk alone, said Du Bois. Therefore, I beg you will choose some other window. There are plenty at Rambouillet to choose from. And why should I not look at these windows if I choose? Asked Chanley. Because they are those of my wife, replied Du Bois. Of your wife? Yes, of my wife, who has just arrived from Paris, and of whom I am jealous. I warn you. Diabo, murmured Gaston. He must be the husband of the person to whom Helene has been given in charge, and in order to conciliate a person who might be useful to him. Monsieur, said he politely, in that case I am willing to leave a place where I was walking without any object in view. Oh, thought Du Bois, here is a polite conspirator. I must have a quarrel. Gaston was going away. You are deceiving me, monsieur, said Du Bois. The Chevalier turned as though he had been bitten by a serpent. However, prudent for the sake of Helene and for the mission he had undertaken, he restrained himself. Is it, said he, because I was polite that you disbelieve my word? You spoke politely because you were afraid, but it is none the less true that I saw you looking at that window. Afraid? I afraid? Cried Chanley, facing him. Did you say that I was afraid? I did, replied Du Bois. Do you then seek a quarrel? It appears so. I see you come from Quimper, Corentin. Pax Dieu, said Gaston, drawing his sword. Draw. And you, off with your coat, said Du Bois, throwing off his cloak, and preparing to do the same with his coat. Why so? Asked the Chevalier. Because I do not know you, monsieur, and because those who walk at night frequently have their coat prudently lined with shirt of mail. At these words the Chevalier's cloak and coat were thrown aside, but at the moment when Gaston was about to rush on his adversary, the 4 men appeared and seized him. A duel, monsieur, cried they, in spite of the king's prohibition, and they dragged him toward the door. An assassination, murmured Gaston, not daring to cry out, for fear of compromising Helene. Cowards! We are betrayed, monsieur, said Du Bois, rolling up Gaston's cloak and coat and putting them under his arm. We shall meet again tomorrow, no doubt. And he ran toward the hotel, while they shut up Gaston in the lower room. Du Bois ran up the staircase and into his room, where he opened the precious pocketbook. He found in one pocket a broken coin and a man's name. This coin was evidently a sign of recognition, and the name was probably that of the man to whom Gaston was addressed, and who was called Captain La Jonquière. The paper was oddly folded. La Jonquière, said Du Bois. We have our eyes on him already. He looked over the rest of the pocketbook. There was nothing. It is little, said Du Bois, but it is enough. He folded a paper like the other, took the name, and rang the bell. Someone knocked. The door was fastened inside. I forgot, said Du Bois, opening it, and giving entrance to Monsieur Tapin. What have you done with him? He is in the lower room and watched. Take back his cloak and coat to the place where he threw them. Make your excuses and set him free. Take care that everything is in his pockets, so that he may suspect nothing. Bring me my coat and cloak. Monsieur Tapin bowed low and went to obey his orders. Chapter 9. The visit. All this passed, as we have said, in the lane under Helene's windows. She had heard the noise, and, as among the voices she thought she distinguished as Chevalier, she ran anxiously to the window, when at the same moment Madame de Roche appeared. She came to beg Helene to go into the drawing-room, as the visitor had arrived. Helene started and nearly fell. Her voice failed her, and she followed, silent and trembling. The room into which Madame de Roche led her was without any light, except what was thrown on the carpet by the last remains of fire. Madame de Roche threw some water over the flame, and left the room entirely dark. Begging Helene to have no fear, Madame de Roche withdrew. The instant after, Helene heard a voice behind the 4th door, which had not yet opened. She started at the sound, and involuntarily made a few steps toward the door. Is she ready? Said the voice. Yes, Monseigneur, was the reply. Monseigneur, murmured Helene. Who is coming, then? Is she alone? Yes, Monseigneur. Is she aware of my arrival? Yes, Monseigneur. We shall not be interrupted. Monseigneur may rely upon me. And no light, none whatever. The steps approached, then stopped. Speak frankly, Madame Desroches, said the voice. Is she as pretty as they said? More beautiful than your Highness can imagine. Your Highness! Who can he be? Thought Helene, much agitated. At this moment the door creaked on its hinges, and a heavy step approached. Mademoiselle, said the voice, I beg you to receive and hear me. I am here, said Helene faintly. Are you frightened? I confess it, Shall I say monsieur or monseigneur? Say my friend. At this moment her hand touched that of the unknown. Madame Desroches, are you there? Asked Helene, drawing back. Madame Desroches, said the voice. Tell mademoiselle that she is as safe as in a temple before God. Ah, monseigneur, I am at your feet, pardon me. Rise, my child, and seat yourself there. Madame Desroches, close all the doors, and now, continued he, give me your hand, I beg. Helene's hand again met that of the stranger, and this time it was not withdrawn. He seems to tremble also, murmured she. Tell me, are you afraid, dear child? No, replied Helene, but when your hand clasps mine, a strange thrill passes through me. Speak to me, Helene, said the unknown, with an expression of tenderness. I know already that you are beautiful, but this is the first time I have heard your voice. Speak, I am listening. But have you seen me, then? Asked Helene. Do you remember that 2 years ago the abbess had your portrait taken? Yes, I remember. An artist came expressly from Paris. It was I who sent him. And was the portrait for you? It is here, said the unknown, taking from his pocket a miniature, which Helene could feel, though she could not see it. But what interest could you have in the portrait of a poor orphan? Helene, I am your father's friend. My father, is he alive? Yes. Shall I ever see him? Perhaps. Oh, said Helene, pressing the stranger's hand. I bless you for bringing me this news. Dear child, said he. But if he be alive, said Helene, why has he not sought out his child? He had news of you every month, and though at a distance, watched over you. And yet, said Helene reproachfully, he has not seen me for 16 years. Believe me, none but the most important reasons would have induced him to deprive himself of this pleasure. I believe you, monsieur. It is not for me to accuse my father. No, it is for you to pardon him if he accuses himself. To pardon him, cried Helene. Yes, and this pardon, which he cannot ask for himself, I ask in his name. Monsieur, said Helene, I do not understand you. Listen, then, and give me back your hand. Here it is. Your father was an officer in the king's service at the Battle of Nerwinden, where he charged at the head of the king's household troops. One of his followers, called M. de Chavigny, fell near him, pierced by a ball. Your father wished to assist him, but the wound was mortal, and the wounded man, who knew that it was so, said, Think not of me, but of my child. Your father pressed his hand as a promise, and the man fell back and died, as though he only waited this assurance to close his eyes. You are listening, are you not, Helene? Oh, need you ask such a question? Said the young girl. At the end of the campaign, your father's first care was for the little orphan. She was a charming child of from 10 to 12 years, who promised to be as beautiful as you are. The death of M. de Chavigny, her father, left her without support or fortune. Your father placed her at the convent of the Faubourg Saint-Antoine and announced that at a proper age he should give her a dowry. I thank God, cried Helene, for having made me the child of a man who so nobly kept his promise. Wait, Helene, said the unknown, for now comes a time when your father will not receive your praises. Helene was silent. The unknown continued. Your father, indeed, watched over the orphan till her 18th year. She was an adorable young girl, and his visits to the convent became longer and more frequent than they should have been. Your father began to love his protégée. At first he was frightened at his own love, for he remembered his promise to her dying father. He begged the superior to look for a suitable husband for Mademoiselle de Chavigny, and was told that her nephew, a young Breton, having seen her, loved her, and wished to obtain her hand. Well, monsieur, asked Helene, hearing that the unknown hesitated to proceed. Well, your father's surprise was great, Aline, when he learned from the superior that Mademoiselle de Chaverny had replied that she did not wish to marry, and that her greatest desire was to remain in the convent where she had been brought up, and that the happiest day of her life would be that on which she should pronounce her vows. She loved someone, said Aline. Yes, my child, you are right. Alas, we cannot avoid our fate. Mademoiselle de Chaverny loved your father. For a long time she kept her secret, but one day, when your father begged her to renounce her strange wish to take the veil, the poor child confessed all. Strong against his love when he did not believe it returned, he succumbed when he found he had but to desire and to obtain. They were both so young. Your father scarcely 25, she not 18. They forgot the world, and only remembered that they could be happy. But since they loved, said Helene, why did they not marry? Union was impossible, on account of the distance which separated them. Do you not know that your father is of high station? Alas! Yes, said Helene, I know it. During a year, continued he, their happiness surpassed their hopes. But at the end of that time you came into the world, and then... Well, asked the young girl, timidly, your birth cost your mother's life. Helene sobbed. Yes, continued the unknown, in a voice full of emotion. Yes, Helene, weep for your mother. She was a noble woman, of whom, through his griefs, his pleasures, even his follies, your father retains a tender recollection. He transferred to you all his love for her. And yet, said Helene, he consented to remove me from him, and has never again seen me. Helene, on this point pardon your father, for it was not his fault. You were born in 1703, at the most austere period of Louis XIV. Reign. Your father was already out of favor with the king, or rather with Madame de Maintenon, and for your sake, as much or more than for his, he sent you into Bretagne, confiding you to Mother Ursula, superior of the convent where you were brought up. At length, Louis XIV, being dead, and everything having changed through all France, it is decided to bring you nearer to him. During the journey, however, you must have seen that his care was over you, and when he knew that you were at Rambouillet, he could not wait till tomorrow. He has come to you here, Helene. Oh, mon Dieu, cried Helene, is this true? And in seeing, or rather in listening to you, he thinks he hears your mother, the same accent in the voice. Helene, that you may be happier than she was is his heartfelt prayer. Oh, heavens, cried Helene, this emotion, your trembling hand. Monsieur, you said my father has come to meet me. Yes. Here at Rambouillet? Yes. You say he is happy to see me again? Oh, yes, very happy. But this happiness was not enough. Is it not so? He wished to speak to me, to tell me himself the story of my life, that I may thank him for his love, that I may fall at his feet, that I may ask his blessing. Oh, cried Helene, kneeling. Oh, I am at your feet. Bless me, father. Helene, my child, my daughter, cried the unknown, not at my feet, but in my arms. My father, was Helene's only reply. And yet, continued he, I came with a different intention, prepared to deny all, to remain a stranger to you, but having you so near me, pressing your hand, hearing your voice, I had not the strength, but do not make me repent my weakness, and let secrecy. I swear by my mother's grave, cried Helene. That is all I desire, cried the unknown. Now listen, for I must leave you. What, already? It must be so. Speak, then, my father. I am ready to obey you. Tomorrow you leave for Paris. There is a house there destined for you. Madame de Roche will take you there, and at the very first moment that I can do so, I will come there to see you. Soon, I hope, for do not forget that I am alone in the world. As soon as possible. And pressing his lips to Helene's forehead, the unknown imprinted on it one of those kisses, as sweet to the heart of father as a kiss of love to the heart of a lover. 10 minutes later, Madame de Roche entered with a light. Helene was on her knees praying. Without rising, she signed to Madame de Roche to place the light on the chimney-piece, which that lady did, and then retired. Helene, after praying for some time, rose, and looked around her as though for some evidence that the whole was not a dream. Her own emotion, however, assured her that it was really a great event in her life which had taken place. Then the thought of Gaston rose to her mind. This father whom she had so dreaded to see. This father, who himself had loved so ardently and suffered so deeply, would not do violence to her love. Besides, Gaston was a scion of an ancient house, and beyond all this, she loved him, so that she would die as she were separated from him, and her father would not wish her death. The obstacles on Gaston's side could be but the right, and would doubtless be easily overcome, and Helene fell asleep to dream of a happy and smiling future. Gaston, on his part, set at liberty with many apologies from those who pretended to have mistaken him for another person, went back to fetch his coat and cloak, which he was overjoyed to find where he had left them. He anxiously opened his pocketbook. It was as he had left it, and for greater safety he now burned the address of La Jonquière. He gave his orders for the next day to Owen and retired. Meanwhile, 2 carriages rolled away from the door of the Tigre Royal. In the first were 2 gentlemen in traveling costume, preceded and followed by outriders. In the second was a single traveler, wrapped in a large cloak. This carriage followed close behind the other as far as the Barrière de l'Étoile, where they separated, and while the first stopped at the Palais Royal, the other drew up at the Rue de Valois. Chapter 10, in which Du Bois proves that his police was better organized at an expense of 300,000 francs than the general police for 3 millions. Whatever might have been the fatigues of the preceding night, the Duc d'Orléans still gave his mornings to business. He generally began to work with Du Bois before he was dressed. Then came a short and select levee, followed again by audiences, which kept until 11 or 12 o'clock. Then the chiefs of the councils, La Valliere and Leblanc, came again to count their espionage. Then Torquay, to bring any important letters which he had abstracted. At 2:30 the Regent had his chocolate, which he always took while laughing and chatting. This lasted half an hour. Then came the audience hour for ladies. After that he went to the Duchesse d'Orléans, then to the young king, whom he visited every day, and to whom he always displayed the greatest reverence and respect. Once a week he received foreign ministers, and on Sundays heard Mass in his private chapel. At 6 on council days, at 5 on others, all business was over. Then the Regent would go to the opera, or to Madame de Berry, with whom, however, he had quarreled now, on account of her marriage with Riam. Then came those famous suppers. They were composed of from 10 to 15 persons, and the Regent's presence among them sometimes added to their license and freedom, but never restrained it. At these suppers, kings, ministers, chancellors, ladies of the court were all passed in review, discussed, abused. Everything might be said, everything told, everything done, provided only that it were wittily said, told, or done. When all the guests had arrived, the doors were closed and barred, so that it was impossible to reach the Regent until following morning, however urgent might be the necessity. Du Bois was seldom of the number. His bad health forbade it, and this was the time chosen to pick him to pieces, at which the Regent would laugh as heartily as any one. Du Bois knew that he often furnished the amusement of these suppers, but he also knew that by the morning the Regent invariably forgot what had been said the night before, and so he cared little about it. Du Bois, however, watched while the Regent supped or slept, and seemed indefatigable. He appeared to have the gift of ubiquity. When he returned from Rambouillet, he called Maitre Tapin, who had returned on horseback, and talked with him for an hour, after which he slept for 4 or 5. Then, rising, he presented himself at the door of His Royal Highness. The Regent was still asleep. Du Bois approached the bed and contemplated him with a smile, which at once resembled that of an ape and a demon. At length, he decided to wake him. "Hola, Monseigneur, wake up," he cried. The Duke opened his eyes, and seeing Du Bois, he turned his face to the wall, saying, "Ah, is that you, Abbé? Go to the devil. Monseigneur, I have just been there, but he was too busy to receive me, and sent me to you. Leave me alone, I am tired." "I dare say the night was stormy." "What do you mean?" asked the Duke, turning half round. "I mean that the way you spent the night does not suit a man who makes appointments for 7 in the morning." "Did I appoint you for 7 in the morning?" "Yes, yesterday morning, before you went to St. Germain's." "It is true," said the Regent. "Monseigneur did not know that the night would be so fatiguing." "Fatiguing. I left table at 7. And afterward?" "Well, what afterward?" "Are you satisfied, Monseigneur, and was the young person worth the journey?" "What journey?" "The journey you took after you left the table at 7. One would think, To hear you, that from Street Germain's here, was a long distance. No, Monseigneur is right. It is but a few steps, but there's a method of prolonging the distance. What is that? Going round by Rambouillet. You are dreaming, Abbé. Possibly, Monseigneur. I will tell you my dream. It will at least prove to your Highness that even in my dreams I do not forget you. Some new nonsense. Not at all. I dreamed that Monseigneur started the stag at Le Trailage, and that the animal, after some battling, worthy of a stag of high birth, was taken at Chambourcy. So far, your dream resembles the truth. Continue, Abbé. After which, Monseigneur returned to St. Germain's, sat down at table at 5:30, and ordered that the carriage without arms should be prepared and harnessed, with 4 horses, at 7:30. Not bad, Abbé, not bad. Go on. At 7:30, Monseigneur dismissed every one except Lefebvre, with whom he entered the carriage. Am I right? Go on, go on. The carriage went toward Rambouillet, and arrived there at 9:45, but at the entrance of the town it stopped. Lefebvre went on the carriage to the Tigre, Monseigneur following as an outrider. Here your dream becomes confused, Abbé. No, not at all. Continue, then. Well, while Lefebvre pretended to eat a bad supper, which was served by waiters who called him Excellency, Monseigneur gave his horse to a page and went to a little pavilion. Demon, where were you hidden? I, Monseigneur, have not left the Palais Royal, where I slept like a dormouse, and the proof is that I am telling you my dream. And what was there in the pavilion? First, at the door, a horrible duenna, tall, thin, dry, and yellow. Dubois, I will recommend you to Desroches, and the first time she sees you, she will tear your eyes out. Then inside, mon Dieu, inside. You could not see that even in a dream, Abbé. Monseigneur, you may take away the 300,000 francs which you allow me for my secret police, if, by their aid, I did not see into the interior. Well, what did you see? I, Monseigneur, a charming little Breton, 16 or 17 years old, beautiful, coming direct from the Augustine convent at Clisson, accompanied to Rambouillet by one of the sisters, whose troublesome presence was soon dispensed with. Was it not? Dubois, I have often thought you the devil, who has taken the form of an abbé to ruin me. To save you, Monseigneur, to save you. To save me? I do not believe it. Well, said Dubois, are you pleased with her? Enchanted, Dubois. She is charming. Well, you have brought her from so far that if she were not, you would be quite cheated. The Regent frowned, but reflecting that probably Dubois did not know the rest, the frown changed to a smile. Dubois, said he, certainly you are a great man. Ah, Monseigneur, no one but you doubts it, and yet you disgrace me. Disgrace you? Yes, you hide your loves from me. Come, do not be vexed, Dubois. There is reason, however, you must confess, Monseigneur. Why? Why did you not tell me you wanted a Breton? Could not I have sent for one? Yes, of course I could. As good? Yes, and better. You think you have found a treasure, perhaps? Oh la. Well, when you know what she is and to what you expose yourself. Do not jest, Abbé, I beg. Ah, Monseigneur, you distress me. What do you mean? That you are taken by a glance. A single night fascinates you, and there is no one to compare to the newcomer. Is she then very pretty? Charming. And discreet, virtue itself, I suppose. You are right. Well, I tell you, Monseigneur, you are lost. I? Yes, your Breton is a jade. Silence, Abbé. Why silence? I forbid you to say another word. Monseigneur, you, too, have had a dream. Let me explain it. Monsieur Joseph, I will send you to the Bastille. As you please, Monseigneur, but still you must know that this girl is my daughter, Abbé. Dubois drew back stupefied. Your daughter? And who is her mother? An honest woman, who had the honor of dying without knowing you. And the child The child has been concealed, that she might not be sullied by the looks of such creatures as you. Du Bois bowed and retired respectfully. The regent looked triumphant. "Ah," said Du Bois, who had not quite closed the door. "I thought this plot would bring me my archbishop's mitre. If I am careful, it will bring me my cardinal's hat." Chapter 11. Rambouillet again. At the appointed hour, Gaston presented himself at Helene's domicile, but Madame de Roche made some difficulty about admitting him. Helene, however, said firmly that she was quite at liberty to judge for herself what was right, and that she was quite determined to see Indelivery, who had come to take leave of her. It will be remembered that this was the name which Gaston had assumed during the journey, and which he intended to retain, except when with those connected with his mission to Paris. Madame de Roche went to her room somewhat out of humor, and even attempted to overhear the conversation, but Helene bolted the outer door. "Ah, Gaston," said she, "I have been expecting you. I did not sleep last night." "Nor I, Helene, but I must admire all this splendor." Helene smiled. "And your headdress, how beautiful you are like this. You do not appear much pleased." Gaston made no reply, but continued his investigations. "These rich hangings, these costly pictures, all prove that your protectors are opulent, Helene." "I believe so," said Helene, smiling. "Yet I am told that these hangings and this gilding which you admire are old and unfashionable and must be replaced by new." "Ah, Helene, you will become a great lady," said Gaston, sighing. "Already I am kept waiting for an audience." "My dear Gaston, did you not wait for hours in your little boat on the lake?" "You were then in the convent. I waited the abbess's pleasure." "That title is sacred, is it not?" "Yes. It gives security, imposes respect and obedience." "Doubtless." "Well, judge of my delight. Here I find the same protection, the same love, only more powerful, more lasting." "What?" exclaimed Gaston, surprised. "I find—" "Speak, in heaven's name." "Gaston, I have found a father." "A father? Ah, my dear Helene, I share your joy. What happiness! A father to watch over my Helene, my wife, to watch from afar. Is he separated from you? Alas, it seems the world separates us. Is it a secret? A secret even to me, or you may be sure you should know all. I have no secrets from you, Gaston. A misfortune of birth, a prescription in your family, some temporary obstacle? I do not know. Decidedly, it is a secret, but," said he, smiling, "I permit you be discreet with me, if your father ordered it. However, may I ask some more questions?" "Oh, yes. Are you pleased? Is your father one you could be proud of?" "I think so. His heart seems noble and good. His voice is sweet and melodious." "His voice? But is he like you?" "I do not know. I have not seen him." "Not seen him?" "No, it was dark. Your father did not wish to see his daughter, and you so beautiful. Oh, what indifference!" "No, Gaston. He is not indifferent. He knows me well. He has my portrait, that portrait which made you so jealous last spring. But I do not understand this. It was dark, I tell you." "In that case one might light these girandoles," said Gaston. "That is well, when one wishes to be seen, but when one has reasons for concealment—" "What?" interrupted Gaston. "What reason can a father have for hiding from his own daughter? Excellent reasons, I believe, and you should understand them better than I can." "Oh, Helene," said Gaston, "with what terrible ideas you fill my mind." "You alarm me, Gaston. Tell me, what did your father speak of?" "Of his deep love for me." Gaston started. "He swore to me that in future I should be happy, that there should be no more uncertainty as to my fate, for that he would despise all those considerations which had induced him as yet to disown me as a daughter." "Words, words! But what proof did he give you? Pardon me these questions, Helene. I dread misfortune. I wish that for a time your angel's innocence could give place to the sharpness and infernal sagacity of a fiend. You would then understand me. I should not need to subject you to this interrogatory, which now is so necessary." "I do not understand your question, Gaston. I do not know how to reply to you. Did he show you much affection?" Yes. But in the darkness, when he wished to speak to you, he took my hand, and his trembled the most. Gaston clenched his hands with rage. He embraced you paternally, did he not? He gave me a single kiss on the forehead, which I received on my knees. Helene, he cried. My fears were not groundless. You are betrayed. You are the victim of a snare. Helene, this man who conceals himself, who fears the light, who calls you his child, is not your father. Gaston, you distress me. Helene, angels might envy your innocence, but on earth all is abused. Even angels are insulted, profaned by men. This man, whom I will know, whom I will seize and force to have confidence in your love and honor, shall tell me, it be not the vilest of beings, whether I am to call him father or kill him as a wretch. Gaston, your brain is wandering. What can lead you to suspect such treachery? And, since you arouse my suspicions, since you hold a light over those ignoble labyrinths of the human heart, which I refuse to contemplate, I will speak to you with the same freedom. Was I not in this man's power? Is not this house's? Are not the people by whom I am surrounded devoted to his orders? Gaston, if you love me, you will ask my pardon for what you have thought and said of my father. Gaston was in despair. Do not destroy one of the purest and holiest joys I have ever tasted. Do not poison the happiness of a life which I have often wept to think was solitary and abandoned, without other affection than that of which heaven forbids us to be lavish. Let my filial ties compensate for the remorse which I sometimes feel for loving you almost idolatry. Helene, forgive me, cried Gaston. Yes, you are right. I sully your pure joys by my contact, and it may be the noble affection of your father, but in heaven's name, Helene, give some heed to the fears of my experience and my love. Criminal passions often speculate on innocent credulity. The argument you use is weak. To show at once a guilty love will be unlike a skillful corrupter, but to win you by a novel luxury pleasing to your age, to accustom you gradually to new impressions, to win you at last by persuasion, is a sweeter victory than that of violence. Helene, listen to my prudence of 25 years. I say my prudence, for it is my love that speaks, that love which you should see so humble, so devoted, so ready to accept a father whom I knew to be really your parent. Helene made no answer. I implore you, continued Gaston, not to take any determination now, but to watch everything around you. Suspect the perfumes which are given you, the wine which you are offered. Everything, Helene, watch over yourself. You are my happiness, my honor, my life. My friend, I will obey you. This will not keep me from loving my father. Adore him, Helene, if I am wrong. You are a noble friend, Gaston. We are agreed, then. At the slightest suspicion, write to me. Right. You leave me, then. I must go to Paris on business. I shall be at the Hotel Muids d'Amour, Rue de Bourdonnais. Write down this address, and do not show it to anyone. Why so many precautions? Gaston hesitated. Because, if your devoted protector were known, his plans for aiding you might be frustrated in case of bad intentions. You are somewhat mysterious, Gaston. I have a father who conceals himself, and a lover, this word I can hardly speak, who is going to do the same. But my intentions, you know, said Gaston, attempting to force a laugh. Ah, Madame de Roche is coming back. She thinks our interview too long. I am as much under tutelage as at the convent. Gaston imprinted a kiss on the hand Helene held out to him. As Madame de Roche approached, Helene made a formal curtsy, which Gaston returned by an equally formal bow. Gaston left for Paris. Owen awaited him with impatience, and this time could not reproach his master with being slow, for in 3 hours they were in Paris. Chapter 12. Captain L.A. Jonquière. There was, as the reader has learned, in the Rue de Bourdonnais, a hotel where one could lodge, eat, and drink. In his nocturnal interview with Du Bois, Tappan had received the famous name of La Jonquière and had transmitted it to Livier, who had passed it to all the chiefs of police, who had begun to search for the suspected officer in all the equivocal houses in Paris. The conspiracy of Cellamare, which we have related in a history of the Chevalier d'Harmental, had taught them that everywhere conspirators were to be found. It was, however, by luck or by cleverness, Maitre Tappan himself who, in the Rue de Bourdonnais and in the Hotel Meuse d'Amour, found La Jonquière, who was in a nightmare to Du Bois. The landlord took Tappan to be an old attorney's clerk and replied to his questions politely that the Captain La Jonquière was in the hotel but was asleep. Tappan asked no more. La Jonquière was asleep, therefore he was in bed, for it was only 6 in the morning, if he were in bed. Then he must be stopping at the inn. Tappan went back to Palais Royal and found Du Bois, who had just left the Regent. A number of false La Jonquières had already been discovered by his emissaries. One was a smuggler, called Captain La Jonquière, whom Levier had found and arrested. A second was La Jonquille, sergeant in the French Guards, and many others. "Well," said Du Bois, when Tappan had made his report, "you found the Real Captain La Jonquière, then?" "Yes, Monseigneur." "Is he called La Jonquière?" "Yes, Monseigneur." L.A. La Jon Quière, continued he, spelling the word. "La Jonquière," repeated Tappan. "A captain?" "Yes, Monseigneur." "What is he doing?" "Waiting and drinking." "That must be he," said Du Bois. "And does he pay?" He evidently attached great importance to the question. "Very well, monsieur." "A la bonne heure, Tappan. You have some sense." "Monseigneur," said Tappan modestly, "you flatter me. It is quite clear. If he had not paid, he could not have been a dangerous man." Du Bois gave him 10 louis as a reward, gave him some further orders, and set out at once to go to the Rue de Bourdonnais. Let us say a word regarding the interior of the hotel. It was partly hotel, partly public house. The dwelling rooms were on the first floor, and the tavern rooms on the ground floor. The principal of these, the common room, had 4 oak tables and a quantity of red and white curtains, some benches along the walls, some glasses on a sideboard, some handsomely framed pictures, all blackened and rendered nauseous by smoke, completed the tout ensemble of this room, in which sat a fat man, with a red face, 35 or 40 years old, and a little pale girl of 12 or 14. This was the landlord and his only daughter and heiress. A servant was cooking a ragout in the kitchen. As the clock struck 1, a French guard entered and, stopping at the threshold, murmured, "Rue de Bourdonnais, Meuse d'Amour, in the common room, to sit at the table on the left and wait." Then, in accordance with this, the worthy defender of his country, whistling a tune and twirling his mustache, seated himself at the place indicated. Scarcely had he had time to seat himself and strike his fist on the table, which, in the language of all taverns, means some wine, than a second guard, dressed exactly like the first, appeared at the door, murmured some words, and, after a little hesitation, seated himself by the other. The 2 soldiers looked at each other, and both exclaimed, "Ah!" which in all languages means surprise. "It is you, Grippart," said one. "It is you, Lullevant," said the other. "What are you doing in this tavern?" "And you?" "I do not know." "Nor I." "You come here, then?" "Captain L.A. Jonquière, page 463. Link to larger image. Under orders. That is my case." "And you are waiting?" "For a man who is coming. With a watchword, and on this watchword, I am to obey as though it were Tappan himself." "Just so. And in the meantime, I have a pistole for drink." "I have a pistole also, but I was not told to drink." "And it being doubtful?" "In doubt, as the sage says, I do not abstain." "In that case, let us drink." And he raised his hand to call the landlord, but it was not necessary, for he was standing near, expecting orders. "Some wine," cried the 2 guards. "Orleans," added one, "I like that." The landlord brought an enclosed bottle. The 2 drinkers filled their glasses, emptied them, and then placed them on the table, each with a different grimace, but both intended to express the same opinion. When the host was gone, one said to the other, "You know more of this than you have told me?" "I know it concerns a certain captain," answered the other. "Yes, just so. But I suppose we shall have aid to arrest him?" "Doubtless. 2 to 1 is not enough. You forget the man with the watchword." "Ah, I think I hear something." "Yes, someone coming downstairs." "Chut! Silence!" and the soldiers, much more occupied by their commission than if they had really been soldiers, kept an eye turned toward the staircase while they drunk. They were not deceived. The step on the staircase approached, and they saw, first, some legs and a body, then a head descending. The legs were covered with fine silk stockings and white cashmere breeches, the body with a tight blue coat, and the head with a three-corner hat, jauntily placed over one ear. His epaulets left no doubt that he held the rank of captain. This man, who was in fact Captain La Jonquière, was about 5'5", rather fat, and had a sagacious air. One would almost suppose that he suspected spies in the two soldiers, for he turned his back to them at once, and entered into conversation with his host in a somewhat assumed tone and manner. "In truth," said he, "I should have dined here, and this delicious perfume of stewed kidneys would have tempted me, but some bons vivants are expecting me at the Galabet de Paphos. Perhaps a young man may come here this morning, but I could not wait any longer. Should he ask for 100 pistoles, say that I shall be back in an hour, if he will wait." "Very well, Captain," said the host. "Some wine," said the guard. "Ah," said the captain, throwing an apparently careless glance at the drinkers. "Here are some soldiers who have but little respect for an epaulet." Then, turning to the host, "Serve these gentlemen. You see they are in a hurry." "Ah," said one, rising, "as soon as monsieur will permit." "Certainly I permit it," said La Jonquière, and he stepped toward the door. "But, Captain," said the host, stopping him, "you have not told me the name of the gentleman you expect." La Jonquière hesitated. After a moment, "Monsieur Gaston de Chanley," he replied. "Gaston de Chanley," repeated the host. "I hope I shall remember the name. Gaston. Ah, I shall remember Gascon. Chanley. Ah, I shall think of Chandel. That is it," repeated La Jonquière gravely. "Gascon de Chandel," and he went out, but not without looking round the corners of the street and the angles of the houses. He had not taken 100 steps in the Rue Saint-Honoré before Du Bois presented himself at the door. He had passed La Jonquière, but, never having seen him, could not recognize him. He presented himself boldly, dressed as a shopkeeper. Chapter 13. Monsieur Moudinet, draper at St. Germain-en-Laye. Du Bois at once accosted the host. "Monsieur," said he timidly, "does Captain La Jonquière lodge here? I wish to speak to him." "You wish to speak to him?" said the host, examining the newcomer from head to foot. "If possible," said Du Bois. "Are you sure that is the person you want?" asked the host, who did not think this was the man La Jonquière expected. "I think so," said Du Bois modestly. "A short, fat man?" "Yes." "Drinks his brandy neat?" "That is the man. Always ready with his cane, if he is not attended to directly." "Ah, that is Captain La Jonquière. You know him, then?" "Not in the least," said Du Bois. "True, for you must have met him at the door." "Diable, is he out?" said Du Bois, with a start of ill humor badly repressed. "Thank you." And he called up an amiable smile. "He has not been gone 5 minutes. But he is coming back? In an hour? May I wait for him, monsieur?" "Certainly, if you take something." "Give me some brandy cherries," said Du Bois. "I never drink wine except with meals." The two guards exchanged a contemptuous smile. The host hastened to bring the cherries. "Ah," said Du Bois, "only 5? At Saint-Germain-en-Laye they give 6. "Possibly, monsieur, for at Saint-Germain-en-Laye they have no excise to pay." "Yes, I forgot that." And he began to eat a cherry, which he could not, however, accomplish without a grimace. "Where does the captain lodge?" asked Du Bois. "There is the door of his room. He preferred the ground floor." "Yes," murmured Du Bois. "The windows look into the public road. And there is a door opening into the Rue de Deux Boules." "Oh, how convenient! And does not the noise annoy him?" "There is another room above. Sometimes he sleeps in one, sometimes in the other." "Like Dennis the Tyrant," said Du Bois, who could not refrain from Latin or historical quotations. "What?" said mine host. Du Bois bit his lip. At this moment, one of the soldiers called for wine, and the host darted off to wait upon him. Du Bois turned to the two guards. "Thank you," said he. "What is it, bourgeois?" asked they. France and the Regent, replied Du Bois. The watchword, cried both, rising. Enter this room, said Du Bois, showing La Jonquiere's room. Open the door into the Rue de Deux Boules and hide behind a curtain, under a table, in a closet, wherever you can. If when I come in, I can see so much as an ear, you will have no pay for 6 months. The two men emptied their glasses and entered the room, while Du Bois, who saw they had forgotten to pay, put a piece of 12 sous on the table. Then, opening the window and calling to the driver of a hackney carriage standing before the door, "Levier," said he, "bring the carriage to the little door in the Rue de Deux Boules, and tell Tappan to come up when I knock on the windows with my fingers. He has his orders. Be off." The host reappeared. "Hola!" cried. "Were my men?" "A sergeant came and called them away." "But they have not paid." "Yes, they left a 12 sou piece on the table." "Diable, 12 sous, and my wine is 8 sous the bottle." "Ah," said Du Bois, "no doubt they thought that as they were soldiers you would make a reduction." "At any rate," said the host, consoling himself, "it is not all lost, and in our trade one must expect this kind of thing. You have nothing of the sort to fear with Captain La Jonquiere?" "Oh, no. He is the best of lodgers. He pays without a word and ready money. True, he never likes anything." "Oh, that may be his manner," said Du Bois. "Exactly. What you tell me of his prompt payment pleases me. Have you come to ask for money?" He said he expected someone to whom he owed 100 pistoles. "No. On the contrary, I owe him 50 louis. 50 louis. Peste," said the host. "What pretty sum." "Perhaps I was mistaken," and he said receive, not pay. "Are you the Chevalier Gaston de Chanley?" "Does he expect the Chevalier Gaston de Chanley?" said Du Bois, with a joy he could not conceal. "He told me so," said the host. "Is that you?" "No, I am not noble. I am called Moutonnet." "Nobility is nothing," said the host. "One may be called Moutonnet and be an honest man." "Yes, Moutonnet, draper at Saint-Germain-en-Laye." "And you have 50 louis for the captain?" "Yes. In turning over some old accounts of my father's, I find he owed 50 louis to Captain La Jonquiere's father, and I had no peace till, instead of the father, who is dead, I had found the son. Do you know there are not many debtors like you? The Moutonnets are all the same, from father to son. When we are owed anything, we are pitiless. Listen, there's an honest fellow who owed Moutonnet in damp, son 160 francs. My grandfather put him in prison, and there he has been for 3 generations, and he has just died there. I calculated that, during the 30 years he was there, he cost us 12,000 francs, but we maintain the principle. But I beg your pardon for keeping you with all this nonsense, and here is a new customer for you." "Ah," said the host, "it is Captain La Jonquiere himself." "Captain," continued he, "someone is waiting for you." The captain entered suspiciously. He had seen some strange, and he thought, sinister faces about. Du Bois saluted him politely. La Jonquiere asked the host if the friend he had expected had arrived. "No one but monsieur. However, you lose nothing by the exchange, since one was to fetch away money, and the other brings it." La Jonquiere, surprised, turned to Du Bois, who repeated the same story he had told to the host, and with such success that La Jonquiere, calling for wine, asked Du Bois to follow him into his room. Du Bois approached the window and quietly tapped on it with his fingers. "But shall I not be in the way in your room?" asked Du Bois. "Not at all, not at all. The view is pleasant. As we drink, we can look out and see the passers-by. And there are some pretty women in the Rue de Bourdonnais." They entered the room. Du Bois made a sign to Tappan, who appeared in the first room, followed by 2 men, then shut the door behind him. Tappan's 2 followers went to the window of the common room and drew the curtains, while Tappan placed himself behind the door of Jonquiere's room, so as to be hidden by it when it opened. The host now returned from La Jonquiere's room to write down the receipt for the money which La Jonquiere had just paid him for the wine, when Tappan threw a handkerchief over his mouth and carried him off like a feather to a second carriage standing at the door. One of the men seized a little girl who was cooking eggs. The other carried off the servant, and soon they were all on the way to Saint Lazare, drawn by 2 such good horses that it was evidently not a real hired car. Tappan remained behind, and taking from a closet a calico apron and waistcoat, signed to a loiterer who was looking in at the window, and who quickly transformed himself into a publican. At this moment, a violent noise was heard in the captain's room, as of a table thrown down with bottles and glasses. Then oaths, then the clinking of a sword, then silence. Presently a carriage was heard rolling away up the Rue de Deux. Tappan looked joyous. "Bravo," said he, "that is done." "It was time, masters," said the pretended publican, "for here is a customer." Chapter 14. Trust the signs of gratitude. Tappan at first thought that it was a Chevalier de Chanley, but it was only a woman who wanted a pint of wine. "What has happened to poor M. Bourguignon?" asked she. "He has just been taken away in a coach." "Alas," said Tappan. We were far from expecting it. He was standing there talking, and was suddenly seized with apoplexy. Gracious heavens! "We are all mortal," said Tappan, throwing up his eyes. "But why did they take the little girl?" "To attend to her father. It is her duty. But the servant? To cook for them." "Ah!" I could not understand it all. So I came by a pint of wine, though I did not want it, that I might find out. "Well, now you know." "Yes, but who are you?" "I am Champagne Bourguignon's cousin. I arrived by chance this morning. I brought him news of his family, and the sudden joy overcame him. Ask Regent," continued Tappan, showing his assistant, who was finishing an omelet commenced by the landlord's daughter. "Oh, yes, everything passed exactly as M. Champagne says," replied Regent, wiping away a tear with the handle of his spoon. "Poor M. Bourguignon. Then you think that we should pray for him?" "There is never any harm in praying," said Tappan sententiously. "Ah, stop a minute. Give me good measure." Bourguignon would have groaned in spirit could he have seen the wine that Tappan gave for her 2 sous. "Well," said she, "I will go and tell the neighbors, who are very anxious, and I promise you my custom, M. Champagne. Indeed, if M. Bourguignon were not your cousin, I would tell you what I think." "Oh, tell me, never mind that." "I perceive that he cheated me shamefully. What you have given me for 2 sous, he would hardly have given me for 4. But there is no justice here there is in heaven, and it is very providential that you are to continue his business." "I believe so," said Tappan in a half voice, "particularly for his customers." And he dismissed the woman just as the door opened, and a young man entered, dressed in a blue cloak. "Is this the Hotel Lemuez de Moor?" asked he. "Yes, monsieur." "Does Captain La Jonquière lodge here?" "Yes, monsieur." "Is he within?" "Yes, he has just returned." "Tell him, if you please, that the Chevalier Gaston de Chanley is here." Tappan offered the Chevalier a chair and went into La Jonquière's room. Gaston shook the snow from his boots and cloak, and proceeded leisurely to examine the picture on the wall, never supposing that he had close to him 3 or 4 swords, which, at a sign from polite host, would leave their sheaths to be plunged into his breast. Tappan returned, saying, "Captain La Jonquière waits for M. de Chanley." Gaston proceeded to the room where sat a man whom the host pointed out as Captain La Jonquière, and, without being much of a physiognomist, he perceived at once that he was no bully. Little, dry, gray-eyed, uneasy in his uniform, such appeared the formidable captain whom Gaston had been recommended to treat with so much consideration. "This man is ugly and looks like a sexton," thought Gaston. Then, as the stranger advanced toward him, "Have I the honor of speaking to Captain La Jonquière?" asked Gaston. "Himself," said Dubois. "And are you Le Chevalier Gaston de Chanley?" "I am, monsieur." "Have you the sign of recognition?" asked the false La Jonquière. "Here is the half of the gold piece." "And here the other," said Dubois. They tried the 2 which fitted exactly. "And now," continued Gaston, "the papers." And he drew from his pocket the strangely folded paper on which was written the name of La Jonquière. Dubois took from his pocket a similar paper, bearing Gaston's name. They were precisely alike. "Now," said Gaston, "the pocketbook." They found that their new pocketbooks were precisely similar, and both, though new, contained an almanac for the year 1700, 19 years previous. "And now, monsieur," said Gaston, "now we will talk of business. Is not that your meaning, Chevalier?" "Exactly. Are we safe?" "As though in a desert." They seated themselves by a table, on which were a bottle of sherry and 2 glasses. Du Bois filled one, and was about to fill the other, when Gaston stopped him. Pest, thought Du Bois. He is slender and sober, bad signs. Caesar mistrusted then people who did not drink, and Brutus and Cassius were such. Captain, said Gaston, after a short silence, when we undertake, as now, an affair which we risk our heads, I think we should know each other, so that the past may vouch for the future. Montluis, Talouet de Couedic, and Pont-Calac have told you my name and condition. I was brought up by a brother, who had reasons for personal hatred to the Regent. This hatred I have imbibed. Therefore, 3 years ago, when the League was formed among the nobility in Bretagne, I entered the conspiracy. Now I have been chosen to come to Paris to receive the instructions of Baron de Valef, who has arrived from Spain, to transmit them to the Duc d'Oliveris, His Catholic Majesty's agent in Paris, and to assure myself of his assent. And what is Captain La Jonquière to do in all this? Asked Du Bois, as though he were doubting the Chevalier's identity. To present me to the Duc d'Oliveris. I arrived 2 hours ago. Since then I have seen M. de Valef, and now I come to you. Now you know my history. Du Bois listened, and when Gaston had finished, As to me, Chevalier, said he, throwing himself back indolently in his chair, I must own my history is somewhat longer and more adventurous. However, if you wish to hear it, I obey. I think it necessary in our position to know each other, said Gaston. Well, said Du Bois, as you know, I am called Captain La Jonquière. My father was, like myself, a soldier of fortune. This is a trade at which one gains in general a good deal of glory and very little money. My glorious father died, leaving me, for sole inheritance, his rapier and his uniform. I girded on a rapier, which was rather too long, and I wore the uniform, which was rather too large. From that time, said Du Bois, calling the Chevalier's attention to the looseness of his coat, from that time I contracted the habit of always having plenty of room to move easily. Gaston nodded, as though to express his approbation of this habit. Thanks to my good looks, I was received in the Royal Italian, which was then recruiting in France. I held a distinguished post. When, the day before the Battle of Malplaquet, I had a slight quarrel with my sergeant about an order which he gave me with the end of his cane raised instead of lowered, as it should have been. Pardon me, said Gaston, but I cannot see what difference that could make to the order he was giving. It made this difference, that in lowering his cane it struck against my hat, which fell to ground. The result was a duel, in which I passed my saber through his body. Now, as I certainly should have been shot if I had waited to be arrested, I made off, and woke the next morning, devil take me if I know how it happened, in Marlborough's army. That is to say, you deserted, said Gaston, smiling. I had Coriolanus and the great Condé for examples, said Du Bois, and this appeared to me to be sufficient to excuse me in the eyes of posterity. I assisted then, I must tell you, as we are to hide nothing from one another at the Battle of Malplaquet, but instead of being on one side of the brook, I was on the other, and instead of having the village behind me, I faced it. I think this was a lucky exchange for your humble servant. The Royal Italian left 800 men on the field of battle. My company was cut to pieces, and my own comrade and bedfellow killed by a cannonball. The glory with which my late regiment covered itself so much delighted Marlborough, that he made me an ensign on the field of battle. With such a protector I ought to have done well. But his wife, Lady Marlborough, whom heaven confound, having been awkward enough to spill a bowl of water over Queen Anne's dress, this great event changed the face of things in Europe. In the overthrow which resulted, I found myself without any other protector than my own merit, and the enemies I had gained thereby. And what did you do then? Asked Gaston, somewhat interested in the adventurous life of the pretended captain. What could I do? I was forced to enter the service of His Catholic Majesty, who, to his honor be it said, graciously acceded to my demand for a commission. In 3 years I was a captain, but out of our pay of 30 reals a day, they kept back 20, telling us what an honor it was for us to lend money to the King of Spain. As the security did not appear good in my eyes, I asked leave of my colonel to quit the service and return to my beautiful country, accompanied by a recommendation, in order that the Malplaquet affair might not be too much brought on the tapis. The colonel referred me to the Prince du Celamare, who, recognizing in me a natural disposition to obey, without discussion, Any orders given in a proper manner and accompanied by a certain music employed me actively in the famous conspiracy which bears his name, when all at once the whole affair blew up, as you know, by the double denunciation of La Filin and a wretched writer called Buvat. But His Highness, wisely thinking that what is deferred is not lost, recommended me to his successor, to whom, I hope, my services may be useful, and whom I thank most heartily for procuring me the acquaintance of so accomplished a cavalier as yourself. Count on me, then, Chevalier, as your most humble and obedient servant. I ask nothing of you, Captain, replied Gaston, but to present me to the Duke, the only person to whom my instructions permit me to speak openly, and whom I am to deliver the Baron de Valles' dispatches. I beg, therefore, that you will present me to His Excellency. This very day, Chevalier, said Du Bois, who seemed to have decided on his course of action. In an hour, if you like, in 10 minutes, if necessary. As soon as possible. Listen, said Du Bois. I was a little too quick when I said you should see His Excellency in an hour. In Paris, one is never sure. Perhaps he does not know of your coming, and I may not find him at home. I understand. Perhaps even I may be prevented from coming back to fetch you. How so? Peste, Chevalier, it is easy to see that this is your first visit to Paris. What do you mean? I mean that in Paris there are 3 distinct bodies of police, who all unite to torment those honest people who only desire to substitute what is not for what is. First, the Regent's police, which is not much to be feared. Secondly, that of Messire Voyer d'Argenson. This has its days, when he is in a bad humor or has been received at the convent of the Madeleine du Tresnel. Thirdly, there is Du Bois's police. Ah, that is a different thing. Du Bois is a wretch, cried Gaston. I am well aware of that. Du Bois smiled his sinister smile. Well, to escape these 3 police, said Gaston, one must be prudent, Chevalier. Instruct me, Captain, for you seem to know more about it than I, who am a provincial. First, we must not lodge in the same hotel. Diable, said Gaston, who remembered the address given to Helene. I had a great wish to remain here. I will be the one to turn out then. Chevalier, take one of my rooms, this one or the one above. I prefer this. You are right. On the ground floor, a window looking into one street, a secret door to the other. You have a quick eye. We shall make something of you. Let us return to our business. Right, where was I? You said you might not be able to come back and fetch me. Yes, but in that case, take care not to follow anyone without sufficient signs. By what signs shall I recognize anyone as coming from you? First, he must have a letter from me. I do not know your writing. True, I will give you a specimen. And Du Bois wrote the following lines. Monsieur le Chevalier, follow without fear the man who brings this note. He is deputed by me to lead you to the house where the Duc d'Oliveris and Captain La Jonquière await you. Stay, said he, giving him the note. If anyone comes in my name, he will give you a similar letter. Is that enough? One cannot be too careful. Besides the letter, he will show you the half-coin, and at the door of the house to which he leads you, ask for the 3rd sign, which will be the paper. It is well, said Gaston. With these precautions, the devil is in it if we are mistaken. Now, what am I to do? Wait, you will not go out today. No. Well, remain quiet in this hotel, where you will want for nothing. I will recommend you to the host. Thanks. My dear M. Champagne, said Du Bois to Tapin, opening the door. The Chevalier de Chanley takes my room. Attend to him as you would to me. Then, closing it, that fellow is worth his weight in gold, Tapin, said he in a low voice. Do not lose sight of him for a moment. You will answer for him with your head. Chapter 15. His Excellency the Duc d'Orleans. Du Bois, on leaving the Chevalier, contemplated the chance which had again placed in his hands the future of the Regent and of France. In crossing the hall, he recognized Olivier, and signed him to follow. It was Olivier who had undertaken to get the Real La Jonquière out of the way. Du Bois became thoughtful. The easiest part of the affair was done. It now remained to persuade the Regent to put himself in a kind of affair which he held in the utmost horror, the maneuvering of intrigue. Du Bois began by asking where the regent was and how occupied. The prince was in his studio, finishing an etching commenced by Hubert, the chemist, who, at an adjoining table, was occupied in embalming an ibis by the Egyptian method, which he professed to have recovered. A secretary was reading some letters to the regent. All at once, to the regent's astonishment, for this was a sanctum, the door opened and an usher announced Captain La Jonquière. The regent turned. "La Jonquière," said he, "who is this?" Hubert looked surprised that a stranger should be thus unceremoniously intruded on their privacy. At this moment, a long pointed head appeared at the open door. The regent did not, at first, recognize Du Bois in his disguise, but shortly the pointed nose, which had not its match in the kingdom, betrayed him. A merry look took the place of the astonishment which the regent's features had at first displayed. "Ah, it is you, Abbé," said His Highness, laughing. "And what is the meaning of this disguise?" "It means that I have changed my skin and from a fox have turned into a lion. And now, Monsieur the chemist and Monsieur the secretary, do me the favor to take your bird and letters elsewhere." "Why so?" asked the regent. "Because I have important business to speak with you." "Go to the devil with your important business. It is too late. Come tomorrow." "Monseigneur," said Du Bois, "do not force me to remain till tomorrow in this villainous disguise." "Do what you please, but I have decided that the rest of this day shall be given to pleasure." "Well, I come propose a disguise to you also." "A disguise? What do you mean, Du Bois?" asked the regent, who thought it was probably one of his ordinary masquerades. "Ah, it makes your mouth water, Monsieur Lan. Speak, what do you want to do?" "First send away your chemist and secretary." "You still wish it?" "Decidedly." "Very well, then." The regent signed to them to leave. They did so. "And now," said he, "what is it?" "I want to present to you, Monseigneur, a young man, a very delightful fellow, just arrived from Bretagne, and strongly recommended to me." "His name?" "The Chevalier Gaston de Chanley." "De Chanley?" said the regent. "The name is not unknown to me." "Indeed." "Yes. I think I have heard formerly, but I do not remember where or how. What does your protégé come to Paris for?" "Monseigneur, I shall leave him to tell you that himself." "Tell it to me?" "Yes, that is to say, to the Duc d'Olivarez, whom you are about to personate." "Ah, my protégé is a discreet conspirator, and I have had some trouble to get at the truth of things. He was addressed to Paris, to a certain La Jonquière, who was to present him to the Duc d'Olivarez. Do you understand now?" "Not at all." "Well, I have been Captain La Jonquière, but I cannot be both La Jonquière and His Excellency." "So you reserve that part." "For you, Monseigneur." "Thank you. So you think that, under false name, I will get at the secrets." "Of your enemies, Monseigneur," interrupted Du Bois. "Pardieu, what a dreadful crime, and how it would distress you to change name and dress. You have never before learned secrets by such means. But remember, Monseigneur, our many disguises, and after being called M. Alain and Maitre Jean, you may well, I think, without anything derogatory to your dignity, be called Le Duc d'Olivarez. I ask no better than a disguise for amusement, but a disguise," continued Du Bois, "to preserve the peace of France, to prevent traitors from overthrowing the kingdom, to prevent assassins from murdering you. This, I suppose, is unworthy of you. I understand. Ah, if it were only in pursuit of some little ironmongeress in the Pont Neuf, or the pretty widow of the Rue St. Augustine, it might be worth your while." "If I do what you wish," said the regent, "what will be the result?" "Probably that you will own that I am no visionary, and that you will allow others to watch over you, since you will not watch over yourself. But, once for all, if the thing turns out not worth the trouble, shall I be freed from your worrying?" "I promise you, on my honor." "Abbé, if you have no objection, I should prefer another oath." "Oh, Monseigneur, you are too hard, but you consent?" "Again this folly." "You shall see if it be folly." "I believe you make plots to frighten me." "Then they are well made. You shall see." "Are you certain?" "Absolutely." If I am not frightened, look to yourself. Monseigneur exacts too much. You are not sure, Dubois. I swear to you, monsieur, that you will be moved and will be glad to speak with His Excellency's tongue. And Dubois went out before the Regent had time to withdraw his consent. 5 minutes after, a courier entered the antechamber and gave a letter to a page, who brought it to the Regent. Madame de Roche, said he, looking at the writing, and, breaking the seal, read as follows: Monseigneur, the young lady you left in my charge does not appear to be in safety here. Bah! Exclaimed the Regent, and then read on. The residence in the town, which your Highness feared for her, would be 100 times better than isolation, and I do not feel strong enough to defend her as I would wish and as I ought. Ways, said the Regent. It seems something is the matter. A young man who had written to Mademoiselle Helene shortly before your arrival yesterday presented himself this morning to the pavilion. I wish to refuse him admittance, but Mademoiselle so peremptorily ordered me to admit him, and to retire, that in her look and tone I recognized the blood which commands. Yes, yes, said the Regent. She is indeed my daughter, but who can this young man be? Some coxcomb she must have seen in the convent parlor. Then he read on. I believe, Monseigneur, that this young man and Mademoiselle have met before. I did not think it wrong to listen for your Highness's service, and in spite of the double door I once heard him say, to see you as formerly. Will your Royal Highness secure me against this danger, and send me a written order which I can use to shelter myself from the anger of Mademoiselle? Diable! Exclaimed the Regent. It cannot be a love affair already, brought up in the only convent in France where men never passed a parlor. No, it is some foolish fear of Madame de Roche. But let's see what else she writes. P.S. I have just been to the Hotel Tigre Royal for information. The young man arrived yesterday evening at 7 o'clock, just 3/4 of an hour before Mademoiselle. He came by the Bretagne Road. That is, the road she also came. He travels under the name of M. de Livry. Oh, said the Regent, this looks like a concerted plan. Pardieu, Dubois would laugh if he knew this. How he would talk. It is to be hoped he knows nothing of it, in spite of his police. Hola, page. The page who had brought the letter entered. Where's the messenger from Rambouillet? He is waiting for an answer. Give him this, and tell him to start at once. As to Dubois, while preparing the interview between Gaston and the false Duke, he made the following calculation. I hold the Regent both by himself and his daughter. This intrigue of his is either serious or not. If it be not, I distress her in exaggerating it. If it be serious, I have the merit of having discovered it. But I must not strike both blows at once. First, I must save the Duke, then his daughter, and there will be 2 rewards. Is that the best? Yes, the Duke first. If a young girl falls, no one suffers. If a man falls, a kingdom is lost. Let us begin with the Duke. And Dubois dispatched a courier to M. de Montauran at Nantes. M. de Montauran was, as we have said, the ancient governor of Bretagne. As to Gaston, his plan was fixed. Ashamed of being associated with a man like Jonquière, he congratulated himself that he was now to communicate with the chief of the enterprise, and resolved, if he also appeared base and venial, to return and take counsel with his friends at Nantes. As to Helene, he doubted not. He knew her courage and her love, and that she would die rather than have to blush before her dearest friend. He saw with joy that the happiness of finding a father did not lead her to forget the past, but still he had his fears as to this mysterious paternity. Even a king would own such a daughter, were there not some disgraceful obstacle. Gaston dressed himself carefully. There is a coquetry in danger as well as in pleasure, and he embellishes youth with every advantage of costume. The Regent, by Dubois's advice, dressed in black velvet, and half hid his face in an immense cravat of Mechlin lace. The interview was to take place in a house belonging to the Regent, in the Faubourg Saint-Germain. He arrived there at 5 o'clock, as night was falling. Chapter 16. Monseigneur, we are Bretons. Gaston remained in the room on the ground floor, and dressed himself carefully, as we have said, while Tapin continued his apprenticeship. By the evening he knew how to measure a pint as well as his predecessor, and even better, for he thought that in the compensation which would be given to Bourguignon, waste would be considered, and that therefore the less waste the better. So the morning's customer on her return got badly served and went off disgusted. When his toilet was finished, Gaston began to inspect La Jonquiere's library and found it composed of 3 sets of books: theatrical books, obscene books, and arithmetical books. While he was thus engaged, a man entered, introduced by Tappan, who went out directly and left him alone with Gaston. The man announced that Captain La Jonquiere, not being able to return, had sent him in his stead, Gaston demanding proof. The man showed a letter in the same terms and the same writing as the specimen Gaston had received, and then the half-coin, after which Gaston made no difficulty as to following him, and both got into a carefully closed carriage. They crossed the Pont Neuf and, in the Rue du Bac, stopped at the courtyard pavilion. Then the man drew from his pocket the paper bearing the Chevalier's name as the 3rd signal of recognition. Gaston and his companion alighted, ascended the 4 steps of the doorway, and entered a large circular corridor surrounding the pavilion. Gaston looked round and saw that his guide had disappeared and that he was alone. His heart beat quickly. He was about to face, not the tool, but the master and originator of the whole plot, the representative of a king. He was to play a kingdom against a kingdom. A bell sounded within. Gaston almost trembled. He looked in the glass and saw that he was pale. 1,000 new ideas assailed him. The door opened and La Jonquiere appeared. "Come, Chevalier," said he. "We are expected." Gaston advanced with a firm step. They found a man seated in an armchair, his back turned to the door. A single light, placed on a table and covered with shade, lighted only the lower part of his body. His head and shoulders were in shadow. Gaston thought the face noble, and understood at once that this was a man of worth, and no La Jonquiere. The mouth was benevolent, and the eyes large, bold, and firm, like those of a king or a bird of prey. Deep thought was written on his brow, prudence and some degree of firmness in the lower part of the face. All this, however, in the half-darkness, and in spite of the Mechlin cravat. At least this is an eagle, thought he. The other was but a raven. Gaston bowed silently, and the unknown, rising, went and leaned against a chimney. "Monsieur is the person of whom I spoke to your excellency," said La Jonquiere. "Am Le Chevalier Gaston de Chanley." The unknown bowed silently. "Mordieu," whispered Du Bois in his ear. "If you do not speak, you will not say anything." "This gentleman comes from Bretagne, I believe," said the Duke coldly. "Yes, monsieur, but will your excellency pardon me? Captain La Jonquiere has told my name, but I have not been told yours. Excuse my rudeness, monseigneur. It is not I who speak, it is my province which sends me." "You are right, monsieur," said La Jonquiere, quickly, taking from a portfolio on the table a paper, at the bottom of which was a large signature with the seal of the King of Spain. "Here is the name," said he. "Duc d'Olivares," read Gaston. Then, turning to him, he bowed respectfully. "And now, monsieur," said the Duke, "you will not, I presume, hesitate to speak." "I thought I had first to listen," said Gaston, still on the defensive. "True, but remember, it is a dialogue. Each one speaks in turn." "Monseigneur, you do me too much honor, and I will set the example of confidence." "I listen, monsieur." "Monseigneur, the states of Bretagne." "The malcontents of Bretagne," interrupted the Regent, smiling, in spite of a sign from Du Bois. "The malcontents are so numerous," replied Gaston, "that they may be considered the representatives of the province. However, I will employ the word your excellency points out. The malcontents of Bretagne have sent me to you, monseigneur, to learn the intentions of Spain in this affair. First, let us learn those of Bretagne. Monseigneur, Spain may count on us. We pledge our word, and Breton loyalty is proverbial. But what do you promise? To second the efforts of the French nobility. But are you not French? Monseigneur, we are Bretons. Bretagne, reunited to France by a treaty, may look on herself as separated from the moment when France no longer respects the rights of that treaty. Yes, I know. The old story of a Bretagne's contract. It is a long time since that contract was signed, monsieur. The false La Jonquiere pushed the Regent violently. What matter, said Gaston, if each one of us has it by heart. Chapter 17. Monsieur Andre, you said that the Breton nobility were ready to second the French nobility. Now, what do the French nobility want? They desire, in case of His Majesty's death, to place the King of Spain on the throne of France as sole heir of Louis XIV. Very good, said La Jonquière, taking snuff with an air of extreme satisfaction. But, said the regent, the king is not dead, although you speak almost as if he were. The Grand Dauphin, the Duc and Duchesse de Bourgogne and their children, disappeared in a deplorable manner. The regent turned pale with anger. Du Bois coughed. Then they reckon on the king's death? Generally, monseigneur. Then that explains how the King of Spain hopes, in spite of the renunciation of his rights, to mount the throne of France. But among the people attached to the Regency, he may meet with some opposition. The false Spaniard involuntarily lingered on these words. Monseigneur, replied the Chevalier, this case also has been foreseen. Ah, said Du Bois, this has been foreseen. Did not I tell you, Monseigneur, that the Bretons were valuable to us? Continue, monsieur, continue. In spite of this invitation, Gaston was silent. Well, monsieur, said the pretended duke, I am listening. This secret is not mine, monseigneur. Then, said the duke, I have not the confidence of your chiefs. On the contrary, you alone have it. I understand, monsieur, but the captain is my friend, and I answer for him as for myself. My instructions are, monseigneur, to speak to you alone. But I tell you, I answer for captain. In that case, said Gaston, bowing, I have said all I have to say. You hear, captain, said the regent. Have the kindness to leave us alone. Yes, monseigneur, I have but 2 words to say to you. Gaston drew back. Monseigneur, whispered Du Bois, press him hard. Get out the whole affair. You will never have such another chance. What do you think of our Breton? A noble fellow, eyes full of intelligence and a fine head. So much the better for cutting it off. What do you say? Nothing. Monseigneur, I am exactly of your opinion. De Chanley, your humble servant. Some might be angry that you would not speak before them, but I am not proud, and, provided all things turn out as I expect, I do not care for the means. Chanley bowed. Monsieur, said the regent, when Du Bois had closed the door, we are alone, and I am listening. Speak. You understand my impatience. Yes, monseigneur. You are doubtless surprised that you have not yet received from Spain a certain dispatch which you were to send to Cardinal Olacroni. True, monsieur, said the regent, dissembling with difficulty. I will explain the delay. The messenger who should have brought this dispatch fell ill and has not left Madrid. The Baron de Valef, my friend, who was in Spain, offered himself, and after 3 or 4 days' hesitation, at length, as he was a man already tried in Celomere conspiracy, they trusted him. In fact, said the regent, the Baron de Valef narrowly escaped Du Bois's emissaries. It needed some courage to renew such a work. I know that when the regent saw Madame de Maine and Celomere arrested, Richelieu, Polignac, Malesieux, and Mademoiselle de Launay in the Bastille, and that wretched Le Grand Chancel at the Sainte Marguerite, he thought all was finished. You see, he was mistaken, monseigneur. But do not these Breton conspirators fear that in thus rising they may sacrifice the heads of the Paris conspirators whom the regent has in his power? They hope to save them or die with them. How save them? Let us return to the dispatch, if you please, monseigneur. Here it is. The regent took the paper, but seeing the address to His Excellency the Duc d'Olivarez, laid it on the table unopened. Strange inconsistency. This man opened 200 letters a day by his spies. It is true that then he dealt with Thory or Du Bois, and not with Chevalier de Chanley. Well, monseigneur, said Gaston, you know, doubtless, what this dispatch contains, monsieur. Not word for word, perhaps, but I know it was arranged. Well, tell me. I shall be glad to know how far you are admitted into the secrets of the Spanish cabinet. When the regent is got rid of, said Gaston, without noticing the slight start which his interlocutor gave at these words, the Duc de Maine will be provisionally recognized in his place. The Duc de Maine will at once break the treaty of quadruple alliance signed by that wretch Du Bois. I wish La Jonquière had been here to hear you speak thus. It would have pleased him. Go on, monsieur. The pretender will start with a fleet for the English shore. Prussia, Sweden, and Russia will then be engaged with Holland, The empire will profit by this war to retake Naples and Sicily, to which it lays claim to the House of Swabia. The Grand Duchy of Tuscany will be assured to the second son of the King of Spain. The Catholic Low Countries will be reunited to France. Sardinia given to the Duke of Savoy. Commatio to the Pope. France will be the soul of the Great League of the South against the North. And if Louis XV dies, Philip V will be crowned king of half the world. Yes, I know all that, said the regent, and this is Celamere's conspiracy renewed. But you used a phrase I did not understand. Which, Monseigneur? You said, when the regent is got rid of. How is he to be got rid of? The old plan was, as you know, to carry him off to the prison of Saragossa or the fortress of Toledo. Yes, and the plan failed through the Duke's watchfulness. It was impracticable. 1,000 obstacles opposed it. How was it possible to take such a prisoner across France? It was difficult, said the Duke. I never understood the adoption of such a plan. I am glad to find it modified. Monseigneur, it would be possible to seduce guards, to escape from a prison or a fortress, to return to France, retake a lost power, and punish those who had executed this abduction. Philip V and Alberoni have nothing to fear. His Excellency the Duc d'Oliveris regains a frontier in safety. And, while half the conspirators escape, the other half pay for all. However, Monseigneur, we have the example of the last conspiracy before our eyes, and you yourself named those who are in the Bastille. What you say is most logical, replied the Duke, while, on the contrary, in getting rid of the regent, continued the Chevalier. Yes, you prevent his return. It is possible to return from a prison, but not from a tomb. That is what you would say? Yes, Monseigneur, replied Gaston, with a somewhat tremulous voice. Now I understand your mission. You come to Paris to make away with the regent? Yes, Monseigneur. Explain yourself. We were 5 Breton gentlemen, forming a small party or league in the midst of the General Association, and it was agreed that the majority should decide on our plans. I understand, and the majority decided that the regent should be assassinated. Yes, Monseigneur, were for assassination and 1 against it. And that 1, if I lose your Excellency's confidence, I must own that I was that 1. But, then, why are you to accomplish a design you disapprove? Chance was to decide the one who should strike the blow. And the lot fell on me, Monseigneur. Why did you not refuse? The ballot was without names. No one knew my vote. I should have been taken for a coward. And you came to Paris? For the task imposed on me. Reckoning on me? As on an enemy of the regent, for aid in accomplishing an enterprise which not only concerns the interests of Spain, but which will save our friends from the Bastille. Do they run as much danger as you believe? Death hovers over them. The regent has proofs, and has said of M. de Richelieu that if he had 4 heads, he has wherewith to condemn them all. He said that in a moment of passion. What, Monseigneur, you defend the Duke. You tremble when a man devotes himself to save, not only his accomplices, but 2 kingdoms. You hesitate to accept that devotion. If you fail, everything has its good and evil side. If the happiness of being the savior of a country is lost, the honor of being a martyr to its cause is gained. But remember, in facilitating your access to the regent, I become your accomplice. Does that frighten you, Monseigneur? Certainly, for you being arrested. Well, I being arrested? They may force from you, by means of tortures, the names of those. Gaston's reply was a smile of supreme disdain. You are a foreigner and a Spaniard, Monseigneur, said he, and do not know what a French gentleman is. Therefore I pardon you. Then I may reckon on your silence? Pontcallec, Duquetic, Talouet, and Montluis doubted me for an instant, and have since apologized to me for doing so. Well, monsieur, I will think seriously what you have said, but in your place, in my place, I would renounce this enterprise. I wish I had never entered into it, Monseigneur. I own, for since I did so a great change has taken place in my life, but I am in it and must accomplish it. Even if I refuse to second you, the Breton Committee have provided for that emergency and decided to do without you. Then your resolution is irrevocable. I have said all I had to say. replied the regent, since you are determined to pursue your undertaking. Monseigneur, said Gaston, you seem to wish to retire. Have you anything more to say to me? Not today. Tomorrow or the day after. You have the captain as go-between. When he gives me notice, I will receive you with pleasure. Monseigneur, said Gaston firmly and with a noble air, let me speak freely. We should have no go-between. You and I, so evidently separated by rank and station, are equal before the scaffold which threatens us. I have even a superiority over you, since I run the greater danger. However, you are now, Monseigneur, a conspirator like the Chevalier de Chanley, with this difference, that you have a right, being the chief, to see his head fall before yours. Let me, then, treat as an equal with your excellency, and see you when it is necessary. The regent thought for a moment. Very well, said he. This house is not my residence. You understand I do not receive many at my house. Since the war, my position is precarious and delicate in France. Celmare is in prison at Blois. I am only a sort of consul, good as a hostage. I cannot use too many precautions. The regent lied with a painful effort. Right. Then, post restandem, Andre, you must name the time at which you wish to see me, and I will be there. Through the post? Asked Gaston. Yes. It is only a delay of 3 hours. At each post a man will watch your letter and bring it to me when it arrives. 3 hours after you can come here. Your Excellency forgets, said Gaston, laughing, that I do not know where I am, in what street, at what number. I came by night. Stay, let us do better than that. You ask for time to reflect. Take till tomorrow morning, and at 11 o'clock send for me. We must arrange a plan beforehand, that it may not fail, like those plans where a carriage or a shower of rain disconcerts everything. That is a good idea, said the regent. Tomorrow, then, at 11 o'clock, you shall be fetched, and we will then have no secrets from each other. Gaston bowed and retired. In the antechamber, he found the guide who brought him, but he noticed that in leaving they crossed a garden which they had not passed through on entering, and went out by a different door. At this door the carriage waited, and it quickly arrived at the Rue de Bourdonnais. Chapter 18. The Faubourg Saint-Antoine. No more illusion for the Chevalier. In a day or two, he might be called to his work. The Spanish envoy had deeply impressed Gaston. There was about him an air of greatness which surprised him. A strange circumstance passed across his mind. There was, between his forehead and eyes and those of Helene, one of those vague and distant likenesses which seem almost like the incoherence of a dream. Gaston, without knowing why, associated these two faces in his memory, and could not separate them. As he was about to lie down, worn out with fatigue, a horse's feet sounded in the street. The hotel door opened, and Gaston heard an animated conversation. But soon the door was closed, the noise ceased, and he slept as a man sleeps at 25, even if he be a conspirator. However, Gaston was not mistaken. A horse had arrived, and a conversation had taken place. A peasant from Rambouillet brought in haste a note from a young and pretty woman to the Chevalier de Chanley, Hotel Muids d'Amour. We can imagine who the young and pretty woman was. Tapin took the letter, looked at it, then, taking off his apron, left the charge of the hotel to one of his servants, and went off to Du Bois. "Oh!" exclaimed the latter. "Let's see a letter." He unsealed it skillfully by aid of steam, and on reading it, seemed pleased. "Good. Excellent. Let them alone to go their own way. We hold the reins, and can stop them when we like." Then, turning to Tapin, he gave him the letter, which he had resealed. "Here," said he, "deliver the letter." "When?" asked Tapin. "At once." Tapin stepped toward the door. "No, stop," said Du Bois. "Tomorrow morning will be soon enough." "Now," said Tapin, "may I make an observation?" "Speak." "As Monseigneur's agent, I gain 3 crowns a day." "Well, is not that enough, you scoundrel?" "It was enough as agent. I do not complain. But it is not enough as wine merchant. Oh, the horrid trade! Drink and amuse yourself. Since I have sold wine, I hate it, because you see how it is made. But drink champagne, Muscat, anything, Bourguignon pays. Apropos, he has had a real attack, so your lie was only an affair of chronology." "Indeed." "Yes. Fear has caused it. You want to inherit his goods? No, no. The trade is not amusing. Well, I will add 3 crowns a day to your pay while you are there, and I will give the shop to your eldest daughter. Bring me such letters often, and you shall be welcome. Tappan returned to the hotel, but waited for morning to deliver the letter. At 6 o'clock, hearing Gaston moving, he entered and gave him the note. This was what it contained. My friend, I think of your advice, and that perhaps you were right at last, I fear. A carriage has just arrived. Madame Desroches orders departure. I tried to resist. They shut me up in my room. Fortunately, a peasant passed by to water his horse. I have given him 2 louis, and he promised to take you this note. I hear the last preparations. In 2 hours we leave for Paris. On my arrival, I will send you my address. If I have to jump out the window and bring it, be assured the woman who loves you will remain worthy of herself and you. Ah, Helene, cried Gaston. I was not deceived. 8 o'clock, but she must have arrived. Why was not this letter brought to me at once? You were asleep, monsieur. I waited your awaking. There was no reply to be made. Gaston thought he would go and watch at the barrier, as Helene might not have arrived. He dressed quickly and set out, after saying to Tappan, if Captain La Jonquière comes here, say I shall be back at 9. While Gaston waits uselessly for Helene, let us look back. We saw the Regent receive Madame Desroches' letter and send a reply. Indeed, it was necessary to remove Helene from the attempts of this M. de Livry. But who could he be? Du Bois alone could tell. So when Du Bois appeared, Du Bois, said the Regent, who is M. de Livry of Nantes? Livry, said he. Stay. Yes, Livry. Who knows such a name? Send for M. de Hosier. Idiot. But, Monseigneur, I do not study genealogies. I am an unworthy plebeian. A truce to this folly. Diable, it seems Monseigneur is in earnest about these Livrys. Are you going to give the order to one of them? Because in that case, I will try and find a noble origin. Go to the devil and send me Nos. Du Bois smiled and went out. Nos quickly appeared. He was a man about 40, distinguished-looking, tall, handsome, cold and witty, one of the Regent's most faithful and favorite friends. Monseigneur sent for me. Ah, Nos, good day. Can I serve your Royal Highness in anything? Yes. Lend me your house in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, but empty and carefully arranged. I will put my own people in it. Is it to be for a prude? Nos. The houses in the Faubourg have a bad name, Monseigneur. The person for whom I require it does not know that. Remember, absolute silence, Nos, and give me the keys. A quarter of an hour, Monseigneur, and you shall have them. Adieu. Nos, your hand. No spying, no curiosity, I beg. Monseigneur, I am going to hunt, and shall only return at your pleasure. Thanks. Adieu till tomorrow. The Regent sat down and wrote to Madame Desroches, sending a carriage with an order to bring Helene, after reading her the letter, without showing it to her. The letter was as follows. My daughter, on reflection, I wish to have you near me. Therefore follow Madame Desroches without loss of time. On your arrival at Paris, you shall hear from me, your affectionate father. Philippe V. Page 477. Link to larger image. Helene resisted, prayed, wept, but was forced to obey. She profited by a moment of solitude to write to Gaston, as we have seen. Then she left this dwelling which had become dear to her, for there she had found her father and received her lover. As to Gaston, he waited vainly at the barrier, till, giving up all hope, he returned to the hotel. As he crossed the garden of the Tuileries, 8 o'clock struck. At that moment, Du Bois entered the Regent's bedchamber with a portfolio under his arm and a triumphant smile on his face. Chapter 19. The Artist and the Politician. Ah, it is you, Du Bois, exclaimed the Regent as his minister entered. Yes, Monseigneur, said Du Bois, taking out some papers. Well, what do you say to our Bretons now? What papers are those? Asked the Regent, who, in spite of the preceding day's conversation, or perhaps because of it, felt a secret sympathy with de Chanley. Oh, nothing at all. First, a little report of what passed yesterday evening between M. de Chanley and His Excellency the Duc d'Oliveras. You listen, then, said the Regent. Pardieu, Monseigneur, what did you expect that I should do? And you heard. Oh, what do you think of His Catholic Majesty's pretensions? I think that perhaps they use his name without his consent. And Cardinal Alberoni? To do. Monseigneur, how nicely they manage Europe. The Pretender in England, Prussia, Sweden, and Russia tearing Holland to pieces, the Empire recovering Sicily and Naples, the Grand Duchy of Tuscany for Philip V's son, Sardinia for the King of Savoy, Comanchio for the Pope, France or Spain. Really, this plan is somewhat grand, to emanate from the brain of a bell ringer. All smoke. These prospects, said the Duke, mere dreams. And the Breton League, is that all smoke? I am forced to own that that really exists. And the dagger of our conspirator, is that a dream? No, it even appeared to me likely to be vigorously handled. Peste. Monseigneur, you complain in the other plot that you found none but rose-water conspirators. Well, this time I hope you are better pleased. These fellows strike hard. Do you know, said the Regent thoughtfully, that the Chevalier de Chanley is an energetic and vigorous nature? Ah, the next thing will be, you will conceive a great admiration for this fellow. I know, Monseigneur, that you are capable of it. How is it that a prince always finds such natures among his enemies and not among friends? Because, Monseigneur, hatred is a passion and devotion often only a weakness. But if you will descend from height of philosophy and deign to a simple act, namely, to give me 2 signatures. What signatures? Asked the Regent. First, there is a captain to be made a major. Captain La Jonquière? Oh, no. As to him, we'll hang him when we have done with him. But meanwhile we must treat him with care. Who, then, is this captain? A brave officer whom Monseigneur 8 days, or rather 8 nights ago, met in a house in the Rue Saint-Honoré. What do you mean? Ah, I see I must aid your memory a little, Monseigneur, since you have such a bad one. Speak. One can never get the truth with you. In 2 words, 8 nights ago, you went out disguised as a musketeer through the little door in the Rue Richelieu, accompanied by Nos and Simeon. It is true. What passed in the Rue Saint-Honoré? Do you wish to know, Monseigneur? I do. I can refuse you nothing. Speak, then. You supped at the house. That house, Monseigneur. Still with Nos and Simeon? No, Monseigneur, tete-tete. Nos and Simeon supped too, but separately. You supped, then, and were at table, when a brave officer, who probably mistook the door, knocked so obstinately at yours that you became impatient, and handled the unfortunate who disturbed you somewhat roughly. But he, who, it seems, was not of an enduring nature, took out his sword, whereupon you, Monseigneur, who never looked twice before committing a folly, drew your rapier and tried your skill with the officer. And the result, asked the Regent, was that you got a scratch on the shoulder, in return for which you bestowed on your adversary a sword thrust in the breast. But it was not dangerous? Asked the Regent, anxiously. No. Fortunately, the blade glided along the ribs. So much the better. But that is not all. How? It appears that you owed the officer a special grudge. I had never seen him. Princes strike from a distance. What do you mean? This officer had been a captain for 8 years, when, on your Highness's coming into power, he was dismissed. Then I suppose he deserved it. Ah, Monseigneur, you would make us out as infallible as the Pope. He must have committed some cowardly act. He is one of the bravest officers in the service. Some infamous act, then? He is the most honest fellow breathing. Then this is an injustice to be repaired. Exactly, and that is why I prepared this major's brevet. Give it to me. Dubois, you have some good in you sometimes. A diabolical smile passed over Dubois's face as he drew from his portfolio a second paper. The Regent watched him uneasily. What is that paper? Asked he. Monseigneur, you have repaired an act of injustice. Now do an act of justice. The order to arrest the Chevalier Gaston de Chanley and place him in the Bastille, cried the Regent. "Ah, I see now why you bribed me with good action. But stay, this requires reflection. Do you think I propose to you an abuse of power, Monseigneur?" asked Du Bois, laughing. "No, but yet, Monseigneur," continued Du Bois, "when we have in our hands the government of a kingdom, the thing most necessary is to govern. But it seems to me that I am the master. To reward, yes, but on condition of punishing. The balance of justice is destroyed, Monseigneur, if an eternal and blind mercy weighs down one of the scales. To act as you always wish and often do is not good, but weak. What is the reward of virtue, if you do not punish vice?" "Then," said the Regent, the more impatiently that he felt he was defending a bad though generous cause, "if you wish me to be severe, you should not have brought about an interview between me and this young man. You should not have given me the opportunity of appreciating his worth, but have allowed me to suppose him a common conspirator. Yes, and now, because he presented himself to your Highness under a romantic guise, your artistic imagination runs away with you. Diable, Monseigneur, there's a time for everything. So chemistry with Hubert, engraving with Audran, music with Lefebvre, make love with the whole world, but politics with me." "Mon Dieu," said the Regent, "is it worthwhile to defend a life watched, tortured, calumniated as mine is? But it is not your life you are defending, Monseigneur. Consider, among all these calumnies which pursue you, and against which heaven knows you should be steeled by this time, your most bitter enemies have never accused you of cowardice. As to your life, at Steinkirk, at Nerwinden, and at Lerida, you prove at what rate you valued it. Pardieu, if you were merely a private gentleman, a minister, or a prince of the blood, and you were assassinated, a man's heart would cease to beat, and that would be all. But wrongly or rightly, you coveted a place among the powerful ones of the world. For that end you broke the will of Louis XIV. You drove the bastards from the throne whereon they had already placed their feet. You made yourself regent of France. That is to say, the keystone of the arch of the world. If you die, it is not a man who falls. It is a pillar which supports the European edifice which gives way. Thus our 4 last years of watchfulness and struggles would be lost, and everything around would be shaken. Look at England. The Chevalier de St. George will renew the mad enterprise as a pretender. Look at Holland. Russia, Sweden, and Prussia would hunt her to the death. Look at Austria. Her 2-headed eagle seizes Venice and Milan as an indemnification for the loss of Spain. Cast your eyes on France. No longer France, but Philip V's vassal. Look, finally, at Louis XV, the last descendant of the greatest monarch that ever gave light to the world, and the child whom by watchfulness and care we have saved from the fate of his father, his mother, and his uncles, to place him safe and sound on the throne of his ancestors. This child falls back again into the hands of those whom an adulterous law boldly calls to succeed him. Thus, on all sides, murder, desolation, ruin, civil and foreign wars. Pardieu, if you were merely a private gentleman, a minister, or a prince of the blood, and you were assassinated, a man's heart would cease to beat, and that would be all. But wrongly or rightly, you coveted a place among the powerful ones of the world. For that end you broke the will of Louis XIV. You drove the bastards from the throne whereon they had already placed their feet. You made yourself regent of France. That is to say, the keystone of the arch of the world. If you die, it is not a man who falls. It is a pillar which supports the European edifice which gives way. Thus our 4 last years of watchfulness and struggles will be lost, and everything around will be shaken. And why? Because it pleases Monsieur Philippe d'Orleans to think himself still major of the king's troops or commandant of the army in Spain, and to forget that he ceased to be so from the moment he became regent of France. "You will have it, then," said the Duke. "Stay, Monseigneur," said Du Bois. "It shall not be said that in an affair of this importance you gave way to my importunity. I have said what I had to say. Now I leave you. Do as you please. I leave you the paper. I am going to give some orders, and in a quarter of an hour I will return to fetch it." And Du Bois saluted the Regent and went out. Left alone, the Regent became thoughtful. This whole affair, so somber and so tenacious of life, this remains of the former conspiracy, filled the Duke's mind with gloomy thoughts. He had braved death in battle, had laughed at abductions meditated by the Spaniards and by Louis XIV's bastards. But this time a secret horror oppressed him. He felt an involuntary admiration for the young man whose poniard was raised against him. Sometimes he hated him, at others he excused. He almost loved. Him, Du Bois, cowering down over this conspiracy like an infernal ape over some dying prey, and piercing with his ravenous claws to its very heart, seemed to him to possess a sublime intelligence and power. He felt that he, ordinarily so courageous, should have defended his life feebly in this instance, and his eyes involuntarily sought the paper. "Yes," murmured he, "Du Bois is right. My life is no longer my own. Yesterday, my mother also told me the same thing. Who knows what might happen if I were to fall? The same has happened at the death of my ancestor Henry IV, perchance. After having reconquered his kingdom step by step, he was about, thanks to 10 years of peace, economy, and prosperity, to add Alsace, Lorraine, and perhaps Flanders to France, while the Duke of Savoy, his son-in-law, descending the Alps, should cut out for himself a kingdom in the Milanese, and with the leavings of that kingdom enrich the kingdom of Venice and strengthen the Dukes of Modena, Florence, and Mantua. Everything was ready for the immense result, prepared during the whole life of A, king who was at once a legislator and a soldier. Then the 13th of May arrived. A carriage with a royal livery passed the Rue de la Ferronnière, and the clock of less innocence struck 3. In a moment all was destroyed. Past prosperity, hopes of the future. It needed a whole century, a minister called Richelieu, and a king called Louis XIV, to cicatrize the wound made in France by Raveilac's knife. "Yes, Du Bois was right," cried the Duke, "and I must abandon this young man to human justice. Besides, it is not I who condemn him. The judges are there to decide. And," added he with animation, "have I not still the power to pardon?" And quieted by the thought of this royal prerogative, which he exercised in the name of Louis XV, he signed the paper and left the room to finish dressing. 10 minutes after the door opened softly, Du Bois carefully looked in, saw that the room was empty, approached the table near which the prince had been seated, looked rapidly at the order, smiled on seeing the signature, and folding it in 4, placed it in his pocket, and left the room with an air of great satisfaction.